Chapter 1197. You speak rudely, you deserve to be killed. Yi Xuanji's killing intent surged as he stared fiercely at Yi Dingdang and berated. Yi Dingdang straightened her back and stared back at Yi Xuanji without fear. Tang Zheng moved his feet slightly, blocking their line of sight, and said, Yi Xuanji, what kind of hero is it to target a girl? Why did the Ya family become like this? Yi Xuanji froze slightly, his expression fluctuating as he said, what does this have to do with you? It's not good to spread the family's dirty linen, right? Tang Zheng's eyes were like torches. He immediately revealed the mystery behind it. The entire Ya family has fallen into a deep sleep. This can't be your doing. I'm afraid it's Yi Meiyu's doing. This means that your control over the Ya family has been taken away, right? Yi Xuanji's face flushed red. He blew at his beard and glared, and refuted, nonsense. The Ya family is mine, how can it be taken away by others? Tang Zheng stared straight at him, pointed around, and laughed mockingly, is that so? Then explain all of this. The surrounding guards stared at Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang like tigers eyeing their prey. Yi Xuanji looked at these people, his gaze became unnatural, he snorted angrily and said, this is my Ya family's family matter, why should I say anything to you? Ha ha ha. What a joke. This is just an excuse for you to deceive yourself. The Ya family has completely lost control, it's just that you insist on wearing a fig leaf. Actually, no matter how your Ya family changes, it has nothing to do with me. I'm just here to ask you a question. Tang Zheng shook his head, disdainful of Yi Xuanji's ability to be stubborn, and directly stated his purpose for coming here. Yi Xuanji was startled, he had also been guessing Tang Zheng's purpose. After hearing this question, he looked at him suspiciously and asked, what question? Where is the leader? What? Seeing that Yi Xuanji seemed to have misheard, Tang Zheng repeated, you didn't mishear. I asked you where the chief is. Don't tell me you don't know the answer. Yi Xuanji's eyes flickered, and he said without hesitation, of course I don't. Humph, you're really funny. You actually came to me to ask about his whereabouts. Shouldn't you ask the officials? You're really good at being stubborn. It's useless even if you deny it. Your reaction has already told me that you definitely know the answer. Tang Zheng pressed on. Nonsense. I advise you to leave this place quickly. Otherwise, I won't be polite anymore. Yi Xuanji knew very well that he was no match for Tang Zheng. Although he was arrogant, he didn't dare to act rashly. What if I don't leave? Tang Zheng crossed his arms and looked at Yi Xuanji lazily. Yi Xuanji couldn't sit still. With a whoosh, he flew down from the roof and looked at Tang Zheng from afar. For a moment, he couldn't find any words to refute. Yi Dingdang looked at this scene and her gaze finally fell on Tang Zheng. Although he looked lazy and didn't care, the strong confidence he exuded was intoxicating. Yi Xuanji, you don't dare to speak. Then obediently tell me the answer. Tang Zheng forced. Peng peng peng. Suddenly, a series of uniform footsteps sounded. Tang Zheng's pupils shrank. He discovered that the guards and servants were on the move again. They all rushed towards Tang Zheng at the same time. Each and every one of them had a crazed expression. Their eyes were filled with killing intent and hatred. It was as if they wanted to skin Tang Zheng alive. Stop. Before Tang Zheng could react, Yi Xuanji roared and stopped a few people. However, these people acted as if they didn't see Yi Xuanji and directly rushed towards him. Tang Zheng opened his eyes wide in surprise. This scene was out of his expectations. These guards and servants were all from the Ya family. How could they fight against Yi Xuanji? Isn't this a rebellion? Yi Xuanji's face was ashen. He stared hatefully at his subordinates who were rushing over. These people used to listen to him, but ever since they were hit by Yi Meiyu's heart dream traceless spell, they seemed to have changed into a different person. They didn't listen to his orders at all, and were like puppets. This made Yi Xuanji very angry, but there was nothing he could do. Although he had repeatedly stated that the Ya family was still under his control, he knew very well what the truth was. The Ya family had indeed changed hands, and he had been completely taken over, becoming a commander without an army. His strength was not weak, but he could not compare to Yimeyu. The waves behind the Yangtze River pushed the waves before. He, the wave in front, was ruthlessly slapped on the beach and had to accept the scorching sun. One could imagine how it felt. Not only that, he didn't know what kind of flowery words Yimeyu used, but she actually bewitched Yiku. Yiku turned to Yimeyu, his younger sister, and disobeyed him. Yishuanji scratched his head and couldn't figure out why Yiku had changed so much. He wanted to pass down the Ya family's huge family business to him, but in the end, he betrayed him, which was equivalent to betraying the Ya family. Yishuanji had a deep sense of defeat. This feeling was buried deep in his heart. He cultivated day and night, hoping that one day his cultivation would surpass Yumei's again, and then completely take back the Ya family's dominance. The Ya family was his, and he had to take it back. Otherwise, if he died with grievances, how could he explain it to the Ya family's ancestors when he went to the underworld in the future? However, before he could do this, he was met with Tang Zheng's condemnation. He painstakingly tried to regain his dignity, but he did not succeed. Especially at this moment, the servants and guards ignored his existence and even attacked him. This was completely tearing off the last layer of cloth covering his shame, causing him to feel a strong sense of humiliation that penetrated deep into his bones. He couldn't help but lower his head. No one saw the sparkling tears in his eyes, which almost fell from the corner of his eyes. The servants and guards charged at him without any hesitation. Suddenly, Yishuanji raised his head, his eyes flashing, and growled, "Stop!" The guards acted as if they didn't hear anything, their killing intent leaked out, and a fierce killing move greeted him. "Retreat!" Yishuanji roared once again, but no one retreated. There were no tears in Yishuanji's eyes, and his gaze became extremely complicated. It was as sharp as a blade, and as hot as a scorching sun. Boom! Yishuanji pushed both of his hands outwards, and an invisible wave of air surged out. The shockwave was extremely terrifying, like a tsunami. How could the servants and guards be a match for him? In an instant, they were sent flying backwards. They were scattered all over the ground like spare parts. One by one, they fell to the ground and screamed miserably, but the way they looked at Yishuanji was even more furious, as if they were facing an enemy who killed their father. Looking at this scene, Yishuanji's heart ached. These were the people he had trained, but in the end, they had become his enemies. This was a joke, a huge joke. Ha 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 ha, Yishuanji laughed wildly, and a drop of tear actually flowed out from the corner of his eyes. Chapter 1198. Muddy old tears fell to the ground and splashed out like water. Yishuanji's heart was bleeding. The servants and guards fell to the ground one after another, in a mess. They had the advantage in numbers, but in the end, they were no match for Yishuanji. Seeing this scene, Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang were both stunned for a moment. Yishuanji had completely lost control of the Ya family, to the extent that he could not control his impulse to attack. What's going on? Yi Dingdang asked in confusion. He has completely lost control of the Ya family. These people have become Yimei's slaves and only listen to her orders. Tang Zheng explained. Yi Dingdang thought for a while, then said, "Could it be that Yimei is by her side, so she can order these people?" Tang Zheng was shocked, realizing that he had overlooked a problem. Yimei had never appeared, so how did she control these people? She also did not hear anything. What's so hard about that? The inner demon's voice suddenly sounded. Tang Zheng's attention was immediately attracted by the inner demons, and he asked, "You know what's going on?" "Of course, how could Nightmare's little trick stop me, humph?" The inner demon said proudly, "Nightmare's heart's dream traceless technique has many magical aspects, one of which is that it can make people fall into a dream and control others remotely. These people are obviously controlled by the heart's dream traceless technique." Tang Zheng suddenly realized that this was definitely Yimei's doing. Her heart was really big. These people's eyes are like the eyes of the caster. What they see is what the caster sees. Do you understand? The inner demons asked. Tang Zheng nodded thoughtfully, but he could not suppress the shock in his heart. Not only did Yi Meiyu control others, she had even turned their eyes into an extension of her own vision. Is there a way to break her spell? Others may not be able to do anything, but how can this little trick stop my inner demons? Tang Zheng was overjoyed and said, then hurry up and help me break this spell. Without Qi Yu's check and balance, the inner demon's attitude towards Tang Zheng had changed a lot. They didn't dare to disobey him easily. Moreover, this method of breaking the spell wasn't his core supernatural power, so he heroically agreed, this is my secret. If other people want to learn it, humph, that's wishful thinking. But you're different. Since you want to learn it, I'll teach you. Tang Zheng automatically filtered out the inner demon's boasting, but his impression of the inner demons had improved. He said, thank you. This set of spells is called the Heartbreak spell. With your intelligence, it shouldn't be difficult to learn, the inner demon explained. This set of spells was just a drop in the bucket of his spells, so it wasn't difficult to learn. Heartbreak? Yes, shatter other people's minds. Aren't these people's minds falling into a dream and being controlled? Shatter their minds and they'll naturally be free. Then wouldn't they be dead? Tang Zheng asked curiously. The inner demon snorted and said, do you think my inner demon spells are so simple? If I want to kill someone, I have thousands of ways. Why would I need to use heartbreak? Heartbreak is to shatter other people's minds. It's not fatal, but it can make the person lose their mind for a period of time. What kind of threat can a person without a mind be? The nightmare spells are good, but they're all used to control normal people. Let me ask you, for a person with an abnormal mind, what use would the traceless dream spell have? Tang Zheng nodded while thinking about the meaning of the words. In the end, he couldn't help but admit that the inner demon's words made a lot of sense. Then hurry up and teach it to me. Listen carefully, this is the Heartbreak's chant. Understand it well. As soon as the voice fell, a light flashed in Tang Zheng's mind. A passage of words seemed to be engraved in his mind, firmly memorizing it. Tang Zheng didn't need to recite it word by word. The chant turned into a profound mystery that was branded in his mind and body. His closed eyes finally opened. Looking at the guards and servants who were charging in front of him, he pointed out with his finger and an invisible force rippled out. This force was like a spring rain, moving with the wind, spreading to the top of everyone's head. The charging movement suddenly stopped, as if their pressure points were sealed, and they couldn't move. The murderous intent in their eyes was swept away like the waves, completely disappearing. Bang bang bang. One after another, the sound of people hitting the ground rang out. The rest of the people fell to the ground one after another. Yi Xuanji suddenly raised his head. The tears in his eyes had already dried up. He looked at the people on the ground in shock. He didn't know if they were dead or alive. His eyes became fiery red again. He stared at Tang Zheng hatefully and roared, "What did you do?" He looked like he wanted to kill Tang Zheng. "You killed them? They're my family's people, you." Yi Xuanji pointed at Tang Zheng with his trembling finger. He was so angry that he didn't know what to say. "I killed them." Tang Zheng pointed at his own nose and laughed, "Why would I kill them? Do you think they're dead?" Yi Xuanji was startled. He squatted down to check. Sure enough, they weren't dead, but just unconscious. "What kind of magic did you use?" Yi Xuanji looked up and stared at Tang Zheng, and asked in surprise. He had seen Tang Zheng's magic many times. The most miraculous time was when he was in the ghost realm. He walked through the gates of hell and was reborn. All of this was thanks to Tang Zheng. In the ghost realm, he saw Tang Zheng's strength. He couldn't believe that he could come and go as he pleased in another world. This made a deep impact on him. For a long time, he almost didn't dare to think of making an enemy out of Tang Zheng. As time passed, the contradiction between him and Tang Zheng became deeper and deeper. All kinds of interests led to hatred overshadowing fear. He tried his best to suppress the fear in his heart. At this moment, seeing this scene, that kind of fear once again surged out from the depths of his heart, causing his heart to turn cold. The way he looked at Tang Zheng also changed a lot. he suddenly felt a sense of melancholy. The days of martial artists seemed to have come to an end. Whether it was Tang Zheng or his granddaughter Yi Meiyu, they were all young and had risen up in a very short period of time. They had completely left these old fellows behind. The heavens seemed to have destined that martial artists had completely declined. Tang Zheng sneered, but did not say the 3 words heartbreak technique. He only looked at Yi Xuanji coldly and said, "You wouldn't know the divine abilities of a cultivator even if I told you. How do you feel seeing the Ye family reach this point?" Yi Xuanji's expression changed, his gaze wandered around the people on the ground, as if he had lost his soul. The huge family business he had created had completely changed hands, and the Ye family no longer had anything to do with him. Chapter 1199. Didn't you want to know where the leader is? Yi Xuanji's words shocked Tang Zheng. He stared at Yi Xuanji with a burning gaze and asked, "You're finally willing to tell me the truth?" The change in the Ye family had touched Yi Xuanji's heart, which was why he compromised. Looking at Yi Xuanji's dazed expression, Tang Zheng suddenly had a feeling of enlightenment, as if he could understand his thoughts. However, he would not pity him, because a pitiful person must have something to hate. Yi Xuanji could have walked on a broad path, but he was too selfish. What he wanted was too different from his own strength, which led to the current situation. All of this was his own fault. Yi Xuanji looked at Tang Zheng coldly and said, "I don't know where the leader is, but someone does." "Who?" "Yi Meiyu." Yi Xuanji clenched his teeth, and said this name with mixed feelings. In the past 20 years or so, this name was like a child to him, unable to cause many ripples. Even though Yi Meiyu was dissolute and lived a chaotic life, causing the Ye family to be humiliated, he did not feel too strongly about it. After Yi Meiyu became strong and forcefully entered the Ye family, Yi Xuanji's position was in danger, and his feelings became extremely complicated. He looked forward to the descendants of the Ye family becoming stronger, but he did not wish for it to be like this. Completely ignoring him and playing by himself, he was like an old man who did not die, extremely unnecessary. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as he asked in astonishment, "You really don't know anything, you, the patriarch?" "He." He didn't finish his sentence, but the word he was enough to reveal too much. The corner of Yi Xuanji's mouth twitched. His expression seemed calm, but in reality, there were too many emotions that no one knew about. "Where is Yi Meiyu?" Yi Xuanji shook his head. "These people are all his spies. If they see you, it is equivalent to her seeing you. If she knows that you want to find her, she will definitely hide. It will be extremely difficult for you to find her." Tang Zheng frowned. If that was the case, wouldn't all his efforts have been for naught? Yi Xuanji looked at Tang Zheng with a gaze full of ridicule. Seeing Tang Zheng in trouble, he felt a sense of satisfaction in his heart. "You have already successfully used the heart-shattering technique. Searching for the source, how difficult is it for you to find Yi Meiyu?" the inner demon said to Tang Zheng lazily. Tang Zheng's head trembled. He knew that the inner demons had a way, and his heart calmed down. He looked at Yi Xuanji with ridicule, and said, "Do you think this is enough to stop me? Just watch. Inner demon, tell me the solution." The inner demon said, "Not only can the heart-shattering technique shatter a person's mind, it can also follow the trace of thought left in the bottom of their hearts and search for the source. Yi Meiyu can use their eyes to see you, and you can also track Yi Meiyu from their hearts." Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. The heart-shattering technique actually had such a miraculous effect. Although he had learned the technique, if he did not have the guidance of the inner demons, he would not have been able to completely comprehend it in a short period of time. At this point, the inner demons no longer kept Tang Zheng in suspense, and simply told him the method of anti-tracking. Tang Zheng understood, and a line seemed to appear in front of his eyes, spreading out from the hearts of the people on the ground. More than 100 thin lines twisted into a rope, gradually growing larger, and finally appearing more and more clearly in front of Tang Zheng's eyes. The line spread into the distance. "Ding dang, let's go." Tang Zheng held Yi Dingdong's hand and jumped onto the roof. Yi Xuanji stared at this scene in a daze. He could not see the line, but Tang Zheng's sudden departure caused him to have a strange thought. Could it be that Tang Jing found a way? Impossible. Yi Xuanji shook his head fiercely, denying this point of view, but he was still not confident in his heart. It was as if every time he concluded that it was impossible for Tang Jing, the final result would cause him to be taken aback, as if he had been slapped in the face. Nothing is impossible. A voice quietly sounded in his ears. Yi Xuanji's entire body trembled, like an unsheathed treasure sword. He suddenly turned around and stared at the direction of the voice with a torch-like gaze. A person was standing there unknowingly, as if he had always been hiding there. Yi Xuanji actually did not notice him, and his heart could not help but sink. However, when he saw the person's face, he felt that it was only natural. Because, this person was Granny Li, the former palace lord of Li Palace. She was once an existence that Yi Xuanji could not reach. He racked his brains to establish a connection with her and win her over. Now, the two sides were people from two different worlds. Yi Xuanji did not let down his guard at all, and said, "Granny Li, why did you come to my Ye family?" "Huh, is this Ye family still yours?" Granny Li hit the nail on the head. Yi Xuanji's face turned red, and stammered, "What does this have to do with you? You don't have to be hostile to me, because I have no hostility towards you. On the contrary, I am here to help you." Granny Li said with a smile, just like a wolf grandmother. Yi Xuanji was not so easily fooled. He sneered and said, "I advise you not to waste your breath and saliva." Granny Li shook her head and sighed, "You have been deceived by your own grandchildren, so you don't believe in anyone. I can understand, but what path do you have now? You are the only one left, and you are powerless to change this situation. As for the Ye family, do you think you can still take it back with your own strength?" This question made Yi Xuanji speechless. His heart was filled with sorrow, and his face became unnatural. Granny Li knew that she had to take the right medicine, and it had to be strong medicine. So, she continued to mercilessly attack. "If you don't have anyone to help you, then you are a complete failure." Could it be that the dignified Yi Xuanji is willing to be a failure? Yi Xuanji raised his head and stared hatefully at Granny Li. Although he did not answer, his meaning was self-evident. He was not willing. Granny Li's lips curled into a smile, and the wrinkles on her face became even more strange and thought-provoking. "If you sincerely submit to the High Lord, then you can take back everything you've lost. This is your chance, and it's also a chance for all martial artists. This world has completely changed. If you stubbornly stick to the old ways, then you will definitely be eliminated by history. The High Lord is at the forefront of history, an existence that creates history. Submitting to the High Lord is the general trend." Granny Li talked non-stop, and Yi Xuanji's eyes slightly fluctuated. His heart was obviously fluctuating, but no one could guess his true thoughts. "Not only you, but other cultivators will also submit to the High Lord, because this is a chance for us cultivators. Haven't you always wanted to increase your strength? Aren't you getting more and more powerless now? Because this society has already been promoted to a great world, and the world's spiritual energy has undergone earth-shaking changes. It is the most beneficial for cultivators to cultivate, and the space for cultivators to survive will be rapidly compressed. If you do not resist, then you will die without a doubt." Yi Xuanji looked at Granny Li in surprise. He did not expect her to say such words. This was completely out of his expectations. Resist? Cultivators are so powerful, how can you resist? I think you are just running out of tricks, just wishful thinking. Yi Xuanji snorted disdainfully. He did not think that Granny Li's words had any value. They were just words to confuse people. Granny Li's eyes widened, staring straight at Yi Xuanji. She regretfully shook her head and said, "You are really scared out of your wits. The High Lord is really wrong. Looking for you is even less valuable than looking for an ordinary person. Your fighting spirit has already disappeared, and in the future when you go to the underworld, you will not have the face to see your Ye family's ancestors." Hearing the words ancestors, Yi Xuanji's face became particularly ugly. His face twisted, and his eyes emitted intense sparks. He hatefully glared at Granny Li and said, "Do you dare to say that again?" Granny Li looked at him with disdain and said, not to mention once, even if I say it 1,000 times, 10,000 times, why wouldn't I dare? In the future, you will not have the face to see your Ya family's ancestors. You are an unfilial descendant, and the Ya family will decline in your hands, and even disappear from this world. I will kill you. Yi Xuanji went berserk. Like an angry lion, he leaped and attacked Granny Li. Granny Li raised her walking stick and quickly pointed it at Yi Xuanji. How could Yi Xuanji be Granny Li's opponent? He panicked and the situation immediately changed. After a few moves, Yi Xuanji was immediately held by the walking stick at his throat, unable to move. Yi Xuanji was ashamed and angry at the same time. He hatefully glared at Granny Li and said, "If you want to kill me, then do as you please. If I even frown, then I am not Yi Xuanji." Humph, you have some courage. That means you are not hopeless. Granny Li said, "Although I think you are useless, but since the High Lord wants me to take you, then I will spare your life for now." Granny Li said, "You are not afraid of death, are you afraid to see the High Lord?" I, Yi Xuanji, have nothing to be afraid of. Yi Xuanji raised his head, incomparably proud. Granny Li looked at him expressionlessly and said, "Let's go." The two leaped and left the Ya family's courtyard house. Not long after, the two arrived at a secluded cliff. The mountain wind was biting cold, whistling through the air. A person stood proudly at the edge of the cliff. The mountain wind blew against his body. He was like a small boat in the middle of the waves. No matter how the wind and rain battered him, he remained firm and unwavering. Yi Xuanji's pupils constricted as he stared at the back of this proud and aloof figure. He seemed to be one with the environment, as if the cliff was him and he was the cliff. There was an indescribable and mysterious feeling. "High Lord." Granny Li walked in front of the person and respectfully bowed, "I have brought Yi Xuanji." Ji Wuxiang turned around and looked at Yi Xuanji with a pair of eyes that were neither sad nor happy. His eyes were calm like an ancient well. No one could guess what he was thinking, but there was an inexplicable attraction. Yi Xuanji looked at Ji Wuxiang with a complicated expression. Of course, he knew that Ji Wuxiang, who had been doing well in the capital, was the High Lord. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, his mood was particularly complicated. "Yi Xuanji, are you curious as to why I am looking for you?" Ji Wuxiang asked. Yi Xuanji said, "No matter what your goal is, I will not let you succeed." Chapter 1200. Ji Wuxiang calmly looked at Yi Xuanji and said, "At least your self-confidence has not been destroyed." Yi Xuanji raised his head like a proud tiger. Even though he was old, his aura did not diminish. "You don't believe what Granny Li said to you, right? You don't believe that I have the ability to fight against cultivators?" Before Granny Li could report, Ji Wuxiang had already exposed Yi Xuanji's thoughts. From this, it could be seen that Ji Wuxiang was extraordinary. Yi Xuanji's expression suddenly changed. He stubbornly snorted and refused to comment. "Haven't you always wanted to increase your cultivation? You are still quite a distance away from the martial king realm. I can help you fulfill your wish," Ji Wuxiang said mysteriously. Yi Xuanji thought to himself, "You know what my wish is," but before he could say anything, Ji Wuxiang made a grabbing motion with his hand and a terrifying force enveloped Yi Xuanji. Yi Xuanji roared, "What are you doing?" No one answered him. His body quickly flew toward Ji Wuxiang and fell into Ji Wuxiang's big hand. A big hand firmly grabbed his head, making him unable to move. Yi Xuanji used all his strength to try and break free. But suddenly, his body stiffened and he gave up resisting. Because, a huge amount of inner strength poured into him from the top of his head. Wisdom imbuing. This was the first thought that popped into his mind. Ji Wuxiang was actually pouring inner strength into him to increase his cultivation. No matter how stupid Yi Xuanji was, he knew what Ji Wuxiang was doing. This was a critical moment. If he rashly resisted, it would be a great danger for him. Moreover, this was a rare opportunity. He had a premonition that his strength would increase by leaps and bounds, reaching the realm that he had always dreamed of. Before, he doubted Ji Wuxiang's strength. But at this moment, he did not want to doubt his strength. Because, he was looking forward to this change. No matter how much he disliked Ji Wuxiang in the past, this disgust and hostility was now slowly disappearing. Boom! A loud sound came from Yi Xuanji's body. It was like a thunderclap, but also like a dam bursting, causing a flood to flow for thousands of miles. It rumbled with great momentum. This was a sign that his inner strength had broken through the layers of shackles and completely connected with Yi Xuanji's body and mind. His eyes suddenly widened and flickered with a bright light. His aura changed greatly and became extremely terrifying. Granny Li's eyes lit up as she looked at Ji Wuxiang. Then, she looked at Yi Xuanji with disdain. Yi Xuanji's face was filled with both shock and joy. She thought to herself, "Weren't you always so arrogant? Now you know how powerful the High Lord is." Yi Xuanji indeed knew how powerful Ji Wuxiang was, and he was deeply shocked. He could clearly feel the changes in his power. The steady flow of inner strength through every single one of his meridians made him feel an unprecedented power. His heart surged with emotion. Roar! He raised his head to the sky and let out a roar. His roar soared into the sky and shook the surroundings. Ji Wuxiang let go of his hand, took a step back, and silently looked at Yi Xuanji. Yi Xuanji's emotions calmed down bit by bit, the light in his eyes gradually converged, and his entire aura underwent an earth-shattering change. Yi Xuanji looked at Ji Wuxiang with a burning gaze. Their eyes met, and many complicated emotions intertwined in each other's eyes. Bang! A knee heavily hit the ground. The hard rock seemed to have been hit by a bullet as it flew in all directions, creating a large crater. Yi Xuanji knelt down on one knee, lowered his head towards Ji Wuxiang, and said respectfully, "From today onwards, Yi Xuanji will be at the High Lord's disposal." He was completely convinced by Ji Wuxiang. This time, his strength had increased by leaps and bounds, and he had broken through to the Martial King realm in one fell swoop. This was a realm that he had dreamed of, but in the past, he did not even dare to think about it. One must know that back then, it was almost impossible for him to break through to the Great Master realm. It was only because of Tang Zheng's appearance that he had the opportunity to break through. From then on, the progress of his cultivation had been extremely slow. He had racked his brains, but in the end, he had been defeated by Yi Meiyu. This had dealt an even heavier blow to his confidence. This was like a demonic barrier that firmly occupied his heart. He understood very well that with this demonic barrier, his cultivation would stop moving forward, and it would be difficult for him to advance in the slightest. He never thought that Ji Wuxiang would be able to help him break through to the Martial King realm so easily. What kind of power was this? With his understanding, he was simply unable to think of a reasonable explanation. This was equivalent to the methods of an immortal, and was not the slightest bit weaker than a cultivator. He finally believed Grandma Li's words. The High Lord really had the potential and strength to fight against cultivators. Yi Xuanji's ambition that had been beaten down time and time again awakened, and his unwillingness to accept this had once again sprouted. He wanted to take back everything that belonged to him, clean up the family, and deal with the unfilial descendants of the Ye family. In the future, when he went to the underworld, he could also explain himself to the ancestors of the Ye family. Ji Wuxiang looked at Yi Xuanji with satisfaction and said, "Get up. Follow me, and I will not treat you unfairly. What you have lost, I will take back for you." Yi Xuanji nodded his head heavily, without the slightest doubt. Grandma Li said, "Now you know what I said was true, right?" Yi Xuanji earnestly said, "It was this Yi who was stupid, and had eyes but failed to see. I misunderstood Grandma Li's painstaking efforts. From now on, you better listen to the High Lord's orders, and not let the High Lord's painstaking efforts go to waste," Grandma Li warned. Yi Xuanji nodded, and after pondering for a while, he curiously asked, "High Lord, this Yi has something that I don't understand. How can my cultivation advance by leaps and bounds?" "Of course it's because the High Lord's cultivation is profound, that's why you can do this," Grandma Li rushed to say. This reason was not enough to convince Yi Xuanji, and it could be seen from his expression. Ji Wuxiang faintly smiled, pointed to the sky, and asked, "What do you see?" Yi Xuanji looked up at the sky. The blue sky stretched as far as the eye could see, and there were only a few clouds, and nothing else. He blankly shook his head. "Sky?" Ji Wuxiang was obviously not satisfied with this answer, and Yi Xuanji also knew this, but he really did not know what answer Ji Wuxiang wanted, so he could only answer what he saw. "What else?" "Clouds." "What else?" Yi Xuanji pondered for a while, and blankly shook his head. Ji Wuxiang did not find it strange, and said, "You only see the sky and clouds, but what I see is through this boundless sky, I see the stars. The power of the stars is channeled into a person's body, and that's why your cultivation advances by leaps and bounds." "Star power?" Yi Xuanji asked in astonishment. "You know that cultivators need to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to increase their cultivation, right?" Ji Wuxiang asked. Yi Xuanji nodded. This was a well-known fact. We cultivators often rely on cultivating our inner strength to increase our cultivation. One is external, one is internal, so it's not hard to understand why cultivators often suppress cultivators. Cultivators take in external things for their own use, and the speed at which they increase their cultivation is strange, so we cultivators must change this situation. If cultivators can take in external things, why can't we take in external things for our own use? Yi Xuanji was shocked. Could it be the power of the stars? Ji Wuxiang looked at Yi Xuanji with admiration, and said, "The power of the stars is of a higher level than the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. When we cultivators absorb the power of the stars for our own use, our cultivation will increase by leaps and bounds." "Really?" Yi Xuanji opened his eyes wide. He felt that this was inconceivable. There was actually such a good thing in this world. "Of course it's true, just now was the best proof. I took in the power of the stars for you to use, and enlightened you." Yi Xuanji sank into silence, carefully reflecting on what he just experienced. He also checked the inner strength in his body, and it was indeed much better than before. This feeling made him immersed in it, and he could not help but ask, "Then how can I maintain this situation and continue to absorb the power of the stars?" He knew that this was the key, as the power of the stars would have a crucial effect on his cultivation in the future. Ji Wuxiang looked at Yi Xuanji with praise, as a smart person really quickly grasped the key point. "Only I can take in the power of the stars, but I will find a way to let the cultivators by my side also enjoy this kind of treatment," Ji Wuxiang said. "So you're saying that I don't have a good method right now, and I can only rely on you to take in the power of the stars?" Ji Wuxiang nodded. In fact, he really did not find an effective method for the others, and for him to control the heavens chess, taking in the power of the stars was very easy, as if it was just a thought. At this time, it was time to gather power, and firmly gather it by his side. He also could not let these people freely absorb the power of the stars, and if they wanted to rely on the power of the stars to increase their cultivation, then they must follow by his side, and over time, these people's loyalty and reverence towards him would greatly increase. At that time, he was confident that he would have found a way for all the cultivators to freely absorb the power of the stars, and all the cultivators would be loyal to him, and that would be the time for him to truly make his move. With the power of the heavens chess and the cultivators that were already strong, he was confident that he could fight against the cultivators, and fight for supremacy under the heavens. No matter who it was, they would not be his opponent. "Lord, the cultivators have the advantage in numbers, we might not be their opponent." Yi Xuanji already understood Ji Wuxiang's ambition, and reminded him worriedly. Ji Wuxiang said unconcernedly, "In this world, do you think there are more cultivators, or more cultivators?" "There are more cultivators." Yi Xuanji gave the answer without hesitation. After all, the cultivators had been expelled for hundreds of years, and in these hundreds of years, it was the cultivators who occupied the dominant position. Although they were not as strong as the cultivators, the number of cultivators was huge, and their numbers were definitely in the majority. So, as long as we unite these cultivators, and expel the cultivators again, it will not be a fantasy, a castle in the air," Ji Wuxiang concluded. Hearing these words, Yi Xuanji's blood boiled. He, who had long passed the hot-blooded years, felt as if he had returned to his youth, and was extremely excited. Come and meet the people with the same ideals. Ji Wuxiang pointed at the cliff in the distance, and Yi Xuanji suddenly realized that there were many people sitting cross-legged on the cliff, obviously cultivating, and there were even familiar figures among them. This is... Yi Xuanji asked in shock. Chapter 1201. Yi Xuanji looked at these smart people, and actually found a familiar figure among them. He subconsciously exclaimed, Long Xianyuan. The patriarch of the Long family in Dianan, this family had been reduced to a marginal power because of their repeated clashes with Tangzheng. Their influence was limited to Dianan, and their influence in the country was almost negligible. The few great families in the capital were in imminent danger. How could they have the mood to care about the Long family in Dianan? Yi Xuanji never thought that he would see Long Xianyuan here. Ji Wuxiang had actually subdued him, and Yi Xuanji had a rough impression of many of the other people's faces. Although they were not as powerful as the great families, they were still famous figures in the martial arts world. At this moment, Yi Xuanji understood that Ji Wuxiang was not acting on a whim, but had planned for a long time and made sufficient preparations. Ji Wuxiang would definitely recruit other warriors, and in the future, all warriors would be under Ji Wuxiang's rule to fight against cultivators. What kind of scene would that be? Just thinking about it made Yi Xuanji feel his blood boil and his fighting spirit soar. Ji Wuxiang patted Yi Xuanji's shoulder. From now on, under your feet will be a new world that belongs to us warriors, look forward to it. Tangzheng followed the thin line that was invisible to the naked eye and quickly chased after it. Not long after, he actually chased after it outside the capital. This line stretched for thousands of miles, as if it had no end. This line actually showed signs of weakening, causing Tangzheng to immediately frown. Yi Dingdang looked at him in surprise and asked, What's wrong? Tangzheng fell into silence, but in his heart, he asked the inner demons, Why is this line getting weaker and weaker? This Mingyi Meiyu is too far away from us. If it wasn't too far away, we would have been able to find her very quickly by following this line. The tracking effect of the heartbreak technique is also limited, it is not omnipotent. The inner demons explained regretfully. Then wouldn't we have worked for nothing? That might not be the case. At least for now, we can follow them, the inner demon suggested. Tangzheng pondered for a while. He didn't want to give up this great opportunity. He held Yi Dingdang's hand and said, Dingdang, let's speed up. Then, she felt herself flying like a gust of wind. With a whoosh, she swept up from the ground and rushed into the distance. At this moment, he was walking as if he was flying. With a tap of his toes, he leaped dozens of meters into the air. In the blink of an eye, he had moved an extremely long distance. He was only slightly slower than sword flight. Yi Dingdang felt the wind blow past her ears. At first, she felt her heart palpitate. Then, hot blood rushed out of her heart and flowed to all her blood vessels, limbs, and bones. In an instant, it filled her entire body. She snuggled tightly in Tangzheng's arms, her face flushed with excitement. The two of them traveled a long distance, crossing mountains and crossing roads. The line was getting weaker and weaker, as if it was about to disappear without a trace. Suddenly, a mountain peak stood proudly in front of them. This mountain peak was majestic and magnificent. It made people involuntarily sigh at the uncanny workmanship of nature. Why does this mountain peak feel so strange? Yi Dingdang stared at the mountain peak in a daze and muttered to herself. What's so strange about it? Tangzheng did not understand. Ah, this is actually... Yi Dingdang cried out in surprise. Her beautiful face was flushed red. She covered her cheeks, but her eyes were staring at the mountain peak through the gaps between her fingers. Tangzheng was attracted by Yi Dingdang's reaction. He stared at the mountain peak without blinking. Suddenly, he widened his eyes in realization and said, So it's this thing. He finally understood why Yi Dingdang was so shy. It was because this mountain peak was too similar to a man's little brother. It was just that it was covered by dense trees, so it was not so obvious. But if one looked closely for a few minutes, they would discover the mystery. This is nothing to be surprised about. There are many such mountains all over the country, and many of them were carved by the ancient people. This is a kind of life totem worship, which was quite popular in the ancient times. Tang Zheng had seen reports on this before, so he tirelessly explained. Yi Dingdang slowly moved her hands away and said, the ancient people were really too much. They actually worshipped that. Tang Zheng chuckled and said, we can't use the eyes of modern people to figure out the thoughts of the ancient people. That was something that happened naturally in the background of that era. There's nothing to be surprised about. Then this mountain peak is also man-made? Yi Dingdang suppressed her shyness and asked curiously. No. The inner demon's voice was the first to answer Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was slightly stunned and asked, how do you know? Don't forget, I am the ancient people you are talking about. The life totem worship has been around since ancient times. In ancient times, there was a lack of population. Every tribe hoped to have a prosperous population. So, many people are believers of the life totem worship. The inner demons continued to explain. Many tribes spent a lot of manpower to carve the life totem, just like this mountain peak in front of you. But this is completely different from a naturally formed life totem. A naturally formed life totem is a resource that many tribes would not hesitate to start a war to obtain. For example, this mountain peak in front of you. In ancient times, it was definitely a life totem that many tribes fought over. Tang Zheng looked pensive as he stared at the mountain peak. It was hard to imagine that the ancient people would worship this thing so much that they would even start a war. What's the benefit of this life totem worship? The ancient people couldn't be fools, right? Why would they fight over something useless? Tang Zheng asked curiously. Others might look down on the ancient people, but Tang Zheng had met too many of them. He could not help but sigh that the ancient people were not as ignorant as modern people thought. The ancient people's wisdom was not inferior to modern people. If one really looked at the ancient people, they would be complete idiots. So, the ancient people would definitely not worship the life totem for no reason. There were no benefits. The inner demons were not stingy with their praise and said, you are much smarter than the others. You immediately found the key. The life totem worship is of course useful. It can gather the pure yang energy between heaven and earth and strengthen the tribe's males. This is beneficial to the inheritance of life. The man-made life totem requires a corresponding array to have this effect. The natural life totem is formed by nature. The effect of gathering the pure yang energy between heaven and earth is very different. Tang Zheng was shocked. He was too familiar with the pure yang energy. Ever since Tian Chanzi lived in his body, the term pure yang energy often circled in his mind. He had the 9 yang saint body. His pure yang energy far exceeded that of ordinary people. If he did not have enough pure yin energy to balance it, his life would end when he was 20 years old. The pure yang energy would completely erupt, causing his body to explode and die. Tang Zheng's cultivation grew stronger day by day, and his pure yang energy increased day by day. However, he had many women by his side. For the time being, he had enough pure yin energy to balance the pure yang energy. So, he was able to escape disaster time and time again. Now, he was not worried about the pure yang energy. This was because he was confident that he could suppress it. After listening to the inner demon's introduction, his eyes changed slightly as he looked at the mountain peak and said, then the pure yang energy on this mountain peak is very strong? Of course, this is a life totem that has gathered pure yang energy for countless years. The pure yang energy contained within it is immeasurable. You can go and investigate. The residents around this mountain peak are definitely flourishing. The inner demons was full of confidence. The inner demon's words were indeed accurate. The residents around this mountain peak had always been flourishing, especially in ancient times, where many families gathered. However, in recent years, due to urbanization, they did not want to have children like in ancient times. Therefore, the population gradually decreased. Tang Zheng was deep in thought, looking at the weak line that extended towards the mountain peak. He was almost certain that Yi Meiyu was on this mountain peak. Yi Meiyu had come all the way to this mountain peak. She was definitely not on a sightseeing trip, she definitely had a purpose. He had accidentally discovered this clue, so he had to investigate it. As for the pure yang energy, Tang Jing frowned and thought for a while, ignoring this problem. Are you worried that this mountain peak will affect your 9 yang saint body? The inner demons immediately saw through Tang Zheng's thoughts and asked straightforwardly. Yes. You don't have to worry at all. Although the pure yang energy contained within the life totem is extremely powerful, its effects on the human body are accumulated over time. It's not like you're going to live there for a long time, so how much of an impact will it have on you? The inner demons asked. This question made Tang Zheng's heart completely at ease. He resolutely decided, all right, let's go up the mountain and investigate. Yi Dingdang looked at him in surprise. Is there a problem with going up? Yi Dingdang understood Tang Zheng very well. From his reaction just now, she could tell that there was definitely a problem. Tang Zheng smiled and held her hand tightly. He comforted her, don't worry, it's fine. The pure yang energy contained within this mountain peak is extremely strong, but it won't have much of an effect on me. Pure yang energy? Yi Dingdang was shocked. She was especially sensitive to this word because it concerned Tang Zheng's life. Seeing that Tang Zheng wasn't worried, she let out a sigh of relief. She held his hand. With me here, even if the pure yang energy causes trouble, I can still adjust your pure yang energy. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily and looked at her gently. If you want to adjust my pure yang energy, you'll have plenty of opportunities after we return. Annoying. Yi Dingdang rolled her eyes at him in a flirtatious manner. Tang Zheng's head shook. He quickly suppressed his impulse and said, let's go up the mountain. The two of them moved as fast as lightning. They stepped on the towering treetops and flew towards the peak of the mountain, leaving behind only 2 afterimages. Whoosh! The two of them stopped at the same time and hid themselves in a treetop. The dense foliage covered the two of them and prevented them from being discovered. Holding his breath, he looked over. On the peak of the mountain, there were many people gathered. They stood around the peak with serious expressions. Among them, there were 2 familiar figures that immediately attracted Tang Zheng's gaze. Chapter 1202. Tang Zheng stared fixedly at the 2 familiar faces in the distance. He had expected Yi Meiyu to be at the peak of the mountain, but he did not expect Lu Wuxin to be there as well. Ever since they parted ways at Heaven Mountain, the two of them had not seen each other. Their appearance on the mountain peak of the life totem caused Tang Zheng to immediately become vigilant. Who is that person beside Yi Meiyu? Yi Dingdang had never seen Lu Wuxin before, but she had discovered that she was extraordinary, so she asked curiously. Lu Wuxin. Yi Dingdang was shocked. He is Lu Wuxin. She had heard a lot about the confrontation between Lu Wuxin and Tang Zheng, so she knew that he was not a good person. She asked worriedly, what are they doing here? Tang Zheng said thoughtfully, this mountain is one of the ancient life totems, and Lu Wuxin is from the ancient era. He must have some unknown scheme. Is the life totem really that magical? Yi Dingdang was very curious after hearing Tang Zheng's brief introduction. Tang Zheng did not doubt the inner demon's words, so he nodded and said, perhaps it is even more magical than we imagined. With that, he shut his mouth and asked the inner demons in his heart, can you tell what they want to do? The inner demons was silent for a moment, then said, who am I? How can these people hide their insignificant skills from my eyes? After all, the inner demons were experts who fought with the Yellow Emperor and Chiyu, and the two of them were unable to do anything to him. His knowledge and insight were naturally unquestionable. Tang Zheng was convinced and asked, since that's the case, then tell me what they are doing. They are collecting pure yang energy. Collecting pure yang energy? Tang Zheng was afraid of pure yang energy, but these people actually wanted to collect it. There must be something wrong with this, and the other party's scheme was definitely not simple. What's the use of this? Pure yang energy is a hidden danger to you, but it is a good thing for many people. Ordinary people say that men need masculine energy, and pure yang energy can increase a man's masculine energy. Huh? Tang Zheng was stunned for a moment. Could it be that these people just wanted to be more masculine? That's impossible. He immediately denied this absurd guess and asked, what else? The inner demons pondered for a long time before asking, do you still remember the soul of the golden crow that you shot? Tang Zheng nodded. Of course he remembered. The soul of the golden crow nurtures a lot of pure yang energy. That's why the golden crow can transform into a sun and emit blazing heat. Your shooting sun arrow struck the soul of the golden crow, causing it to disintegrate. It's not easy for these scattered souls of the golden crow to gather again. It's very time-consuming. However, if a large amount of pure yang energy is injected into it, it can greatly shorten the time it takes for the soul of the golden crow to gather again. What's the secret behind this? Pure yang energy is like a magnet, and the soul of the golden crow is like an iron nail. Using pure yang energy to absorb the incomplete soul of the golden crow will result in twice the result with half the effort. Do you understand? Tang Zheng suddenly realized that this metaphor was very vivid. The inner demons were quite up to date with the times. However, this news shocked him. The soul of the golden crow could actually gather again in a very short time. Didn't that mean that there would be another 10 suns illuminating sky? Wouldn't this world be in danger of being destroyed again? No, he definitely couldn't let them succeed. Tang Zheng clenched his teeth and directly rejected this idea. His attitude was firm as he asked, inner demons, I know you have many ways. Do you have any way to destroy their plans? Of course there is a way to destroy their plan to gather pure yang energy. However, there is one thing. In this world, there is more than one life totem. You have to destroy as many of their actions as possible before you can effectively stop them. The inner demons analyzed logically. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. Since there was a way, that was good. In this world, there are a total of 8 naturally formed life totems, and our focus is on these 8. The other man-made life totems are not a concern, because in the long river of history, the formations of these man-made life totems have often collapsed, and they have lost the ability to absorb pure yang energy over time. Do you know where these 8 life totems are? The inner demons laughed confidently, ha ha ha, of course I know. How could this be hidden from me? Hearing that, Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. If he were to search around like a headless fly, it would be too troublesome. It would be more efficient to target and stop the enemy. These people's strength is extraordinary. Ding dang, be careful later, don't get too far away from me. Yi Meiyu is no longer the same as before, you can only use your wits and not your strength. Tang Zheng warned. Yi Dingdang stared fixedly at Yi Meiyu. The two of them had a grudge for a long time. Back then, when Yi Dingdang was still a high school student, the assassination attempt was led by Yi Dingdang. Later on, it was left unsettled, but Yi Dingdang did not forget this grudge. New grudges and old grudges, this time, he had to settle them all. Yi Dingdang also understood the difference between him and Yi Meiyu. In the past, Yi Dingdang was able to crush Yi Meiyu in all aspects, but now, because of the nightmare, Yi Meiyu's strength had increased greatly. She had already soared into the sky and reached the nascent soul stage, far surpassing Yi Dingdang's cultivation of the 9th stage of the innate stage. With a buzzing sound, the bowstring trembled, and the shooting sun arrow seemed to have eyes. With a few puffs, the two enemies at the front fell to the ground and died. Tang Zheng did not show any mercy, it was clean and tidy, the killing intent was shocking. Lu Wuxin held a crystal-clear jade bottle in her hand and saw Tang Zheng's arrival, but she remained indifferent. She chanted and activated a spell, causing the jade bottle to shine brightly. Boom! With a loud sound in the sky, the jade bottle flew up and floated upside down above the mountain peak. As the light flickered, a huge amount of energy was sucked into the jade bottle from the mountain peak. Tang Zheng subconsciously stopped in his tracks and raised his head to look at the jade bottle. He was extremely familiar with this energy. It was as if he was born with it, because this energy was the pure yang force. This jade bottle was actually absorbing the powerful pure yang force contained within the life totem. The pure yang force in the mountain peak was completely mobilized, peeling off every blade of grass and tree on the mountain peak and flying towards the jade bottle. "Stop!" Tang Jing shouted. No one responded. Instead, it was Lu Wuxin who looked at him with disdain and said, "Tang Jing, you've ruined my plans time and time again. This time, you don't have any other helpers. Even the heavens won't help you. I want to see who can save you." Lu Wuxin's cultivation recovered rapidly. Before, there was still a gap between her and Tang Jing, but now her strength was no weaker than Tang Jing's. That was why she ignored Tang Jing's attack and focused on activating her spell to absorb the pure yang force. Tang Jing did not comment. "Your plan has been completely exposed. You want to absorb the pure yang force? No way." Lu Wuxin's expression changed slightly, and he asked, "You keep saying that you know my plan. What exactly is my plan?" This plan was the result of her discussion with Mo Xie. Ever since Mo Xie saw the scene under the Tree of Life, he had completely changed his plan. Originally, he wanted to gradually gather the soul of the Golden Crow and then revive the Yellow Emperor. However, the appearance of Azura and Chiyu gave Mo Xie a great sense of pressure and urgency. Time waited for no one, and he simply did not have the time to do it step by step. Chapter 1203. Only Lu Wuxin and Mo Xie knew about this plan. The others, including Yi Meiyu, only knew a little about it and did not know the details. They only acted according to their orders. Tang Jing was not a roundworm in their stomach, so how could he know about this plan? Lu Wuxin thought that Tang Jing was deliberately exaggerating and wanted to trick her, so she took the initiative to say it out loud. Lu Wuxin looked at Tang Jing with disdain and asked repeatedly, "Why are you speechless? Didn't you say you knew about my plan? What exactly is my plan?" Looking at Lu Wuxin's ugly behavior, Tang Jing shook his head. Lu Wuxin was too arrogant and overconfident. She did not know that Tang Jing had a know-it-all inner demons hidden in his body and saw through their plan at a glance. "You want to absorb the pure yang energy contained in the life totem and then use it to gather the soul of the Golden Crow, so as to revive the Yellow Emperor." Tang Jing talked endlessly. Lu Wuxin's disdainful expression suddenly froze as he stared at Tang Jing in disbelief, as if he was wondering how Tang Jing could know so clearly. Hearing this, the others also looked at Lu Wuxin. These former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor did not know the details, but from Lu Wuxin's change of expression, they immediately understood that Tang Jing had guessed correctly. Tang Jing looked at Lu Wuxin with a faint smile and asked, "Do you want me to continue?" Lu Wuxin shouted hysterically, "Where did you learn all this from? It seems that I guessed correctly." Tang Jing said with a smile. Of course, he would not reveal his hidden trump card, the inner demons. This made Lu Wuxin unable to figure out. The way she looked at Tang Jing changed again and again, but in the end, there were not many clues. No matter how you found out about my plan, what's the use? Can you stop it? This is an irresistible trend. Anyone who tries to stop us will die. Lu Wuxin's face revealed a fervent expression. You are quite confident, but I want to tell you, I want to completely destroy your plan. Tang Jing's voice was loud and clear, and he was also extremely confident. Lu Wuxin raised his head and laughed maniacally, saying disdainfully, "Arrogant words. I'll kill you first and let you know the consequences of your arrogance." Kill. A sharp battle cry pierced through the sky like a sharp knife tearing through the air, trying to tear apart Tang Jing's body. Tang Jing's two fingers gently pinched the bowstring, and when his fingers loosened, the heaven-shocking bow that did not have any sun-shooting arrows shot out an invisible force, tearing the incoming sound wave into pieces. The others tried to besiege Tang Jing, but found that Tang Jing had already passed through them and arrived in front of Lu Wuxin. Heartless Willow. Lu Wuxin let out a low roar. Her coarse hands trembled and the heartless willow glowed in green light. Willow branches grew crazily and swept towards Tang Jing. Break! Tang Jing roared, and the sun-shooting arrow flew out from the heaven-shocking bough, breaking the willow branch at its waist. However, before the willow branch could land on the ground, a new willow branch grew out, and instantly flew in front of Tang Jing. In the next second, it seemed like it was going to wrap him up like a big dumpling. Eh! Tang Jing exclaimed. The willow branches grew much faster than before, which made up for Lu Wuxin's shortcomings. No wonder she was so confident. It turned out that her power had increased greatly, and the attack of the heartless willow had also risen to a new level. What's the use of that? Tang Jing was not afraid at all. He had defeated Lu Wuxin several times before, and although Lu Wuxin's aura was even stronger this time, causing him to be unfathomable, he still had absolute confidence. Sun-shooting arrow, split into 9, break. With a thought from Tang Jing, after giving the order, the sun-shooting arrow quickly split into 9 sun-shooting arrows. This was the magical aspect of the sun-shooting arrow. Not only could it combine 9 arrows into one, it could also split into 9, with many different attacking methods. The 9 sun-shooting arrows circled in the air and shot down from 9 different directions. Puff puff puff, a series of piercing sounds rang out. Not only the willow branch, even the heartless willow had a small hole pierced through it. The green light emitted by the heartless willow instantly dissipated by a lot. This scene caused Lu Wuxin to fly into a rage. His eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. He stared at Tang Jing hatefully, and roared, "You dare to hurt my heartless willow." Tang Jing snorted coldly, "Not only will I hurt your heartless willow, I will not even let your people off." Killing intent surged, causing people to feel deep veneration. The 9 sun-shooting arrows understood Tang Jing's intention and quickly shot towards Lu Wuxin. Lu Wuxin flew into a rage. "You really think you can hurt me?" Lu Wuxin pointed his finger at the heartless willow, a drop of dark red blood dripping from the tip of his finger, quickly merging into the heartless willow. In an instant, the heartless willow shone brightly, revealing a demonic red color. The heartless willow crazily grew like many pythons. It was not just one willow branch, but more than 10 willow branches. They all rolled towards Tang Jing, giving off an imposing aura that made people tremble in fear. Tang Jing's face sank, realizing that this attack was more than twice as powerful as before, but he was not to be trifled with. He recalled the sun-shooting arrow, knocked it, and firmly placed it on the bowstring. Whoosh! The sound of the air being torn apart suddenly rang out, forming a conspicuous ripple. The heartless willow met the attack head-on, tearing the air and letting out a series of sharp hissing sounds, like the hissing of a poisonous snake. Bang! The sun-shooting arrow was the first to break a willow branch, but its attack did not slow down. 3 more willow branches were cut in half, but the other willow branches had already entangled the sun-shooting arrow, causing its attack to come to an abrupt halt. With the sun-shooting arrow trapped, Tang Jing felt as if his hands and feet were bound, his breathing involuntarily quickened. Lu Wuxin laughed sinisterly. "Tang Jing, the heartless willow was fed with my blood, and its mind is connected to mine. Do you really think it only has that little attack power? You underestimate me too much." Tang Jing, don't underestimate Lu Wuxin. Back then, he was a Mahayana realm cultivator, but now that he has just been reborn, his strength has been depleted, and he's only in the apotheosis realm. His heartless willow is very strange, and many people have suffered great losses back then. Otherwise, she wouldn't have become the #1 female general under the Yellow Emperor. The inner demons warned. He had a close relationship with Tang Jing, so of course he did not want to see him lose. Tang Jing did not comment, but his understanding of Lu Wuxin had increased by another level. He asked, "What other strange tricks does the heartless willow have?" "You'll know when you see. Lu Wuxin is about to use his ultimate move. Be careful, dodge." The inner demons only had time to warn him. Tang Jing was shocked. He looked over and saw that the heartless willow had changed. Wisps of red smoke were emitted from the willow leaves, and with a gust of wind, they swept towards Tang Jing. On the ground, wherever the red smoke passed, the flowers and plants withered, and even the rocks and soil turned blood red. It was extremely frightening. "Get out of the way." The former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor cried out in shock. They understood Lu Wuxin and her methods quite well, so when they saw this scene, they understood how powerful it was. However, there was still one who didn't manage to dodge in time and was enveloped by the red smoke. He let out a scream and then stopped abruptly. It was as if his throat was being strangled. His flesh and blood dissolved at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a few seconds, he became a skeleton. However, the bones were permeated with a strange red color, which made one's hair stand on end. This. What is this? Tang Zheng quickly retreated a few steps and stood in front of Yi Dingdang to protect him. Blood Willow. The evolved state of the Heartless Willow. Lu Wuxin said arrogantly. Tang Zheng was shocked, so this was the evolved state of the Heartless Willow. No wonder its attack power had increased so much, especially the red smoke, which made one's hair stand on end. On the other side, the battle between Yi Dingdang and Yi Meiyu had also entered its climax. Yi Dingdang's cultivation was much weaker, but her perseverance and battle experience were outstanding. She had been in danger several times, and although she had been injured, she did not let Yi Meiyu succeed. On the other hand, Yi Dingdang's few unexpected attacks made Yi Meiyu quite angry, and she almost got hit. What Yi Dingdang used was the wind-chasing sword technique. This sword technique was originally extremely exquisite and caught people off guard, causing them to be unable to defend against it. Back then, Yi Xuanji had wanted to imitate the wind-chasing sword technique, but in the end, he was unable to learn the essence of it and ended up becoming a laughingstock. Yi Dingdang, I don't believe that I can't kill you. Yi Meiyu's face was ashen. In the past, when she was not a cultivator, she was always compared to Yi Dingdang. Everyone in the Ye family thought highly of Yi Dingdang, and even disdained her, the eldest miss of the Ye family. On the surface, they were in agreement, but in reality, there were many people who disdained her actions. Yi Meiyu was very clear about this, but there was nothing she could do. She was unrestrained by nature, and was indeed unrestrained. At that time, she did not care about the gazes of these people at all. She did as she pleased, thinking that she was the one with the true personality and that everyone else was just an ordinary person. But now that she thought about it, she finally understood how stupid she was back then. Those people, especially the servants, inadvertently revealed looks of disdain that were like steel needles piercing into her bones. Yi Dingdang, I will kill you and let those people understand who is stronger between the eldest miss and the second miss of the Ye family, and who is the true expert. Yi Meiyu clenched her teeth and roared crazily. Yi Dingdang's face was gloomy, he clenched his teeth, his mind couldn't help but recall the Ye family's doll-like appearance, his anger rising. She glared at Yi Meiyu as if her eyes were about to spit fire, and said, Yi Meiyu, you are a madman. For your ambition, you actually turned so many people into puppets. If not for Tang Zheng's help to free them, they would have lived in the dreamland created by the traceless dream spell for the rest of their lives, completely becoming your, Yi Meiyu's, slaves. You are truly too ruthless. Huh, ruthless? That's their honor. What's wrong with living in the dreamland that I created and becoming my slave? What did they do with that old thing Yi Xuanji in the past? Only by following me can they truly start a new life. Yi Meiyu laughed crazily. At least they didn't use the efforts of others. They had their own feelings and lives. Yi Dingdang retorted. No matter what, she could not forget the empty eyes of those people. Without thoughts, how could a person be called a person? She could barely breathe as she clutched her chest, on the verge of collapse, as if she could fall to the ground at any moment. Suddenly, Tang Zheng and Fang Shishir seemed to have noticed her. They both turned their heads to look at her and gave her a strange smile. This smile contained too many meanings, such as ridicule, disdain, and so on and so forth. In short, this smile was enough to make people feel like they were about to collapse. Yi Dingdang fiercely trembled, her expression fluctuating. Yi Meiyu was extremely carefree. Ever since she was young, she had never felt so carefree. It was as if she had drunk a cup of iced red bayberry juice on a hot summer day. The feeling was indescribable. But suddenly, Yi Meiyu's face froze. She looked at Yi Dingdang in disbelief, thinking, what is she doing? Yi Dingdang laughed. This smile made Yi Meiyu extremely uneasy, because this was supposed to be a heartbroken moment. Why would she laugh? Could it be that she had received too much of a shock and went crazy? How could Yi Dingdang go crazy? Her willpower far exceeded that of an ordinary person. Although she had suffered an unprecedented blow this time and was on the verge of collapsing, when she saw the smile that Tang Zheng and Yi Meiyu revealed to her, her body and mind were greatly shaken, and a kind of absurd feeling assaulted her heart. It was as if a switch had been turned on at the bottom of her heart, illuminating her body and mind, causing her to come to a sudden realization. Dream, all of this is a dream created by Yi Meiyu's heart dream. Yi Dingdang muttered to herself, she had already seen through the mystery. She had actually used her own strength to break through the shackles of the heart dream. Although the heart's dream was powerful, it had a huge flaw, and that was that it had to be as close to reality as possible. Otherwise, if it was too outrageous, or if it deviated from the knowledge of the person who entered the dream, everything would collapse. This was like a skyscraper. Without the support of a foundation, everything was like a pavilion in the air. It was extremely illusory. Yi Dingdang had discovered something that did not conform to reality, and her heart had received a great shock. Only then did she see through the mystery and wake up from the dream. Tang Zheng might have fallen in love with someone else, and Fang Shishir might have been together with Tang Zheng, causing others to be envious of them. However, the two of them would definitely not show that kind of mocking and disgust towards Yi Dingdang. This understanding was deeply rooted in Yi Dingdang's bones, so when she saw that gaze, she understood that everything was fake. This was a foundation of trust and deep feelings, and was not something an ordinary person could do. Yi Dingdang was carefree and did not care about trifles. In fact, her meticulous thoughts were no different from other girls. Yi Meiyu had overlooked this point, and had also underestimated the relationship between Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang. She had added fuel to the fire, and in order to completely destroy Yi Dingdang's body and mind, she did not know that she had overreached herself, and had instead allowed Yi Dingdang to escape. When Yi Meiyu heard Yi Dingdang's words, her eyes almost popped out of their sockets, as if she had seen a ghost. She hysterically roared, impossible, how could she see through the heart's dream technique with her little strength? This is simply impossible. Yi Meiyu kept shouting, but she was unable to change the situation. Even in her dreams, she could not think of the reason for her failure. How could she be the same as Tang Zheng? How could she easily escape from the heart's dream technique? Could it be that what Nightmare said was false, and was just bragging? Yi Meiyu's confidence was shaken. However, when she thought of the scene where the entire Ye family was immersed in the dream and was captivated by her, her confidence returned to her body. She took a deep breath and said, no, this is just an individual phenomenon. The heart's dream is indeed a very powerful spell. But what was the use of that? If this spell could not deal with the enemy he hated the most, then it would be extremely useless. She simply could not imagine that the reason why the heart's dream technique was ineffective against Yi Dingdang was because of her own fault. She was too anxious and did not understand the enemy, which led to this situation. Yi Dingdang had already completely retreated from the dream. The scene in front of her changed and she returned to the peak of the mountain. The biting cold mountain wind made her mind even clearer. She glared hatefully at Yi Meiyu and said, Yi Meiyu, you are too cunning. You actually used this kind of dream to scare me, but your scheme still failed. Yi Dingdang, even without a dream, I can still kill you. Yi Meiyu roared, but she did not seem to have any confidence as she rushed towards Yi Dingdang. After Yi Dingdang broke through the traceless dream technique, her confidence was greatly boosted. Her wind-chasing sword technique's attainments had once again risen to another level. On the contrary, Yi Meiyu was flustered and did not have any ideas. The originally disparity in strength between the two sides was actually difficult to determine the victor. Tang Zheng saw this scene, but he was too busy to do anything. Seeing Yi Dingdang escape from the dream, he could not help but secretly cheer and heave a sigh of relief. The power of the blood willow gradually appeared, causing Tang Zheng to fall into a predicament and be surrounded by danger. Tang Zheng, don't make any unnecessary resistance. Your son's shooting arrow has already been trapped by my heartless willow, what else can you do? Any creature would not be able to survive in this red smoke and would turn into a pile of bones. You can be proud. Back then, who knows how many heroes and tyrants died under the blood willow. It is your honor to be able to receive the same treatment as them. Tang Zheng's expression changed slightly, and said, fuck your honor. You said that no creature would be able to survive in this red smoke. Hee, that reminded me. Lu Wuxin said disdainfully, so what if I remind you? What can you do? For symbols venerable, come out. Tang Zheng roared, and with a loud bang, the entire mountain seemed to tremble violently. A huge creature appeared out of thin air and stood in front of everyone. It's the four symbols venerable again. Lu Wuxin's eyes shone with hatred, you're in cahoots with Qiyu. Back then, the four symbols venerable killed many of our Yellow Emperor tribe's warriors. Today, I will take revenge for them. The four symbols venerable had participated in countless wars with the Yellow Emperor tribe, and had outstanding battle achievements. Back then, no one would have ignored the existence of the four symbols venerable. In addition, the last time in the Heavenly Mountain, the four symbols venerable had also helped Tang Zheng, so this group of old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor naturally hated Qiyu to the bone. Hee, that depends on whether you have the ability or not. Tang Zheng disdainfully retreated, using his hand as a sword, he forced Yi Meiyu back, picked up Yi Ding Dang, and flew up to the four symbols venerable, then disappeared into his chest, safely entering the core of the four symbols venerable. Come back. Yi Meiyu fiercely stomped her feet, but she was unable to catch up. For symbols venerable, destroy them. Tang Zheng gave the order. The four symbols venerable did not say anything, and strode towards Lu Wuxin. Lu Wuxin knew how powerful the four symbols venerable was. The blood willow was useful against living beings, but the four symbols venerable was a magical treasure in the end, not a living being. The blood willow could not do anything to the four symbols venerable. It was as if Tang Zheng was wearing a treasured robe that was impenetrable by swords and spears, completely fearless. The four symbols venerable rushed into the red smoke as if there was no one around. He grabbed a willow branch, and with a fierce tug, it was forcefully pulled off from the heartless willow. A blood-like liquid flowed down from the heartless willow, spilling all over the ground and fusing with the rocks, which immediately turned blood-red. The venerable of the four symbols pulled off the willow branches binding the shooting sun arrow in just a few moves. The shooting sun arrow regained its freedom and let out a resounding cry, as if it was cheering, but also as if it was shouting in anger. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Chapter 1205. Lu Wuxin was enraged when he saw his men fall to the ground dead, but there was nothing he could do. He roared, I'll fight you to the death. A stream of crimson blood spurted out of her mouth like an arrow released from a bow. With a whoosh, it flew to the top of the blood willow. Immediately, the blood willow emitted a bright red light and began to grow wildly as if it had a second spring. In the blink of an eye, it grew into a towering tree, as tall as a canopy. The hanging willow branches were like devil's claws that could reap lives at any time. When the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates saw this, their eyes lit up and they cheered, Tang Zheng, you forced her to do this. This time, she used her heart blood to feed the heartless willow. Your time has come. The heart blood contained Lu Wuxin's entire life's worth of cultivation. It was not something ordinary blood could compare to. Tang Zheng did not have time to think. The bright red willow branches quickly entangled him like a group of demons. In an instant, the four symbols venerable was completely surrounded. Charge! Tang Zheng bellowed, controlling the four symbols venerable. It was like a moving mountain, fiercely charging towards the heartless willow. Whoosh! The four symbols venerable was immediately entangled by the heartless willow. Streaks of crimson light appeared on the four symbols venerable's body and flickered. A crimson mark actually appeared on the four symbols venerable's body. This enormous pressure caused Tang Zheng to feel extremely uncomfortable. He fiercely twisted his body and activated his martial arts. Only then was he able to resolve all of this. For Symbol's Venerable, attack. Pooh! The four Symbol's Venerable's eyes emitted a terrifying light. He fiercely pulled at the willow branches, which were immediately torn in two. They struggled on the ground like broken snake tails. Lu Wuxin hid behind, his face gradually turning pale. When the Heartless Willow used this move in the past, it was always successful, but now, it was actually unable to do anything to Tang Zheng. That damned four Symbol's Venerable, all of this was because of it. If not for this damned fellow, how could Tang Zheng have dodged the attack of the Heartless Willow? The evolved Heartless Willow was capable of attacking all living things, but the four Symbol's Venerable was like an insulator, rendering Lu Wuxin's attacks completely ineffective. The attacks of the four Symbol's Venerable were extremely ferocious. He was completely unafraid of the Heartless Willow and tore apart all the willow branches in a few moves. The clamoring voices of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates immediately died down. It was as if someone had strangled their throats and made them mute. The pressure on Tang Zheng's body suddenly disappeared. His spirit was greatly boosted. His mind moved, and the shooting sun arrow flew out again. With a puff sound, it directly pierced through the Heartless Willow, and a big bloody hole appeared. The willow branches and leaves of the Heartless Willow immediately drooped down, like a defeated soldier, dejected like a stray dog. With a spurt of energy, Tang Zheng roared, "Rise!" The four Symbol's Venerable hugged the Heartless Willow and used all his strength to pull it up by the roots. In the blink of an eye, drops of blood dripped from the roots of the Heartless Willow and dyed the ground red. Lu Wuxin was aghast at this scene. She knew how powerful the four Symbol's Venerable was, but she never expected him to be so powerful in Tang Zheng's hands. He was actually not much weaker than when he was in Qi Yu's hands. How could the four Symbol's Venerable give her time to be shocked? With a crack, the four Symbol's Venerable was snapped into two at the waist. All the branches and leaves drooped down as if they had lost their souls. Pfft! Lu Wuxin spurted out a mouthful of blood as if she had been ruthlessly stabbed. She was connected to the Heartless Willow in body and mind, so when the Heartless Willow was cut into two, her body and mind suffered a similar blow. Naturally, she would vomit blood. In the blink of an eye, her momentum weakened a bit. She hung her head dejectedly and listlessly. Lu Wuxin, you've tried to kill me time and time again. Today, I'll kill you first. Tang Zheng roared. Lu Wuxin was a core member of the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. If he killed her, it would be a severe blow to them. Naturally, he would not take advantage of this great opportunity. As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of footsteps hitting the ground was earth-shattering. The four Symbol's Venerable charged at Lu Wuxin. Lu Wuxin retreated in panic. Without the Heartless Willow, her fighting strength was greatly reduced. Against the four Symbol's Venerable, she felt a sense of defeat. Careful! The other former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor screamed and chased after her in an attempt to stop the four Symbol's Venerable's attack. However, the four Symbol's Venerable quickly left them behind and took the lead, instantly arriving in front of Lu Wuxin. Lu Wuxin had nowhere to retreat. Behind her was a bottomless cliff. Even if she could fly, she could not completely escape the four Symbol's Venerable's attack. She clenched her teeth and her eyes flickered as she tried to think of a countermeasure. Suddenly, her eyes lit up as she came up with a plan. I've got it. Tang Zheng, don't you have the 9 yang saint body? Didn't you want to stop me from gathering pure yang energy? Humph, I'll fulfill your wish. Tang Zheng did not know that danger was approaching. Although victory was in his grasp, he was still very cautious, afraid that something out of the ordinary would happen. He really did want to kill Lu Wuxin. Lu Wuxin stopped retreating and silently formed a hand seal with her fingers. A formless energy rippled from the ground, immediately causing a subtle change to take place in the massive life totem mountain. The originally concealed pure yang energy erupted like a volcano and soared into the sky like a tornado, instantly engulfing Tang Zheng. This pure yang energy did not attack Tang Zheng. Instead, Tang Zheng was like a giant whirlpool while the pure yang energy was like little boats that were sucked into the whirlpool without resistance. In other words, the pure yang energy contained within the life totem seemed to have found an outlet. Tang Zheng's body trembled and the four symbols venerable immediately stopped. The great inertia almost caused the four symbols venerable to fall off the cliff. What's going on? Tang Zheng's expression greatly changed as he discovered some clues. The enormous pure yang energy had actually rushed into his body like a stream flowing into the sea. In the blink of an eye, the pure yang energy had taken over both his body and mind, surging through his 8 extraordinary meridians to every part of his body. This caused an ominous premonition to surface in Tang Zheng's heart. His body contained a lot of pure yang energy and he was very familiar with this energy. However, he usually kept a respectful distance from it. Now that such an enormous amount of pure yang energy had entered his body, he immediately realized that danger was right in front of him. Pure yang energy was not a good thing for him. If he stored too much in his body, he would be one step closer to the god of death. He knew very well that there were only a few months left until his 20th birthday. That was the time that truly worried him. Although he seemed to have forgotten about this matter on the surface, he was still very clear in his bones that he was still far from being able to overcome this crisis. The pure yin energy he had absorbed before was only a temporary solution to the problem. The final problem was not so easily solved. Seeing the four symbols venerable stop, the others all looked over, not understanding why the four symbols venerable had stopped at the last moment. Chapter 1206. The pure yang energy played a role, causing Tang Zheng to instantly fall into an absolutely dangerous situation. His complexion had already undergone a subtle change. Others might not have noticed it, but Yi Dingdang saw it clearly. She hurriedly asked with concern, "What's wrong?" "Lu Wuxin is channeling the pure yang energy from the life totem mountain into my body. She wants me to explode and die," Tang Zheng said in a deep voice. He had once used this move to deal with Qin Shi Huang. At that time, Qin Shi Huang wanted to absorb the dragon qi and cultivation in his body. He took advantage of the situation and channeled a vast amount of pure yang energy into Qin Shi Huang's body. In the end, Qin Shi Huang's body exploded and Tang Zheng narrowly escaped from the gates of hell, escaping from death. Lu Wuxin also knew the drawbacks of the 9 yang saint body, so she deliberately channeled the pure yang energy to deal with him in the same way. Tang Zheng knew the pros and cons of this move. He hurriedly circulated his cultivation to try and stop the pure yang energy from entering his body. However, the pure yang energy was everywhere and he was powerless to stop it. He could only watch as it entered every part of his body and every meridian. Rumble. In an instant, his meridians were like a great river. The pure yang energy flowing through them was like a surging river. A violent conflict was transmitted to every nerve ending. Ah! Tang Zheng screamed as his meridians were torn apart by the vast pure yang energy. It was as if they were about to be torn apart. "Tang Zheng, don't scare me. What can I do for you?" Yi Dingdang hurriedly held his hand and asked anxiously. When the two of them held hands, a strong attractive force came from the center of their palms. Hiss! Yi Dingdang sucked in a breath of cold air. It was as if she was facing a black hole. A mysterious energy in her body was being sucked in, as if her entire body was about to be sucked in. A black hole appeared in Tang Zheng's palm, but it didn't absorb anything other than pure yin energy. A lot of the pure yin energy in Yi Dingdang's body was instantly sucked away. Pure yin energy was very important to a woman. It was a component of the body. If it was completely absorbed, it would be fatal to the body. Yi Dingdang knew this point and also guessed that the energy being sucked out of her body was definitely pure yin energy. An intense tearing pain caused her to almost faint. It was like the pain of flesh and bone being separated. She had never experienced it before, but she gritted her teeth and didn't make a sound. She knew that Tang Zheng's pain was definitely more intense than hers. It was evident from his gradually trembling body and his frown and the beads of sweat that dripped down his face. He has reached the most dangerous moment, I have to support him. If he wants to absorb the purine energy, then I don't mind giving up all of my purine energy, as long as he is safe. She silently made up her mind. However, as her purine energy was. Tang Zheng's entire body and mind was resisting the pure yang energy, so he didn't notice the changes in Yi Dingdang's body. A cold energy entered his body and gradually neutralized a part of the pure yang energy, making him feel as if he was bathed in a spring breeze. He took a deep breath, and before he could be happy, he found that the cold energy was like a clay ox entering the sea. It was instantly submerged by the mighty pure yang energy. It didn't change the situation. Almost instinctively, he quickly circulated his cultivation and absorbed the pure yin energy. In an instant, the pure yang energy in Yi Dingdang's body was almost emptied. Her body went soft and fell to the ground. She looked at Tang Zheng with blurred eyes. She couldn't even make a sound. She could only open her eyes with difficulty and look at Tang Zheng. She silently prayed in her heart, Tang Zheng, you must get better. You are invincible. Pure yang energy can't defeat you. I believe in you, you can do it. Tang Zheng's eyes were looking straight ahead, so he didn't notice Yi Dingdang on the ground. The last bit of pure yin energy he absorbed finally had an effect, allowing Tang Zheng to avoid the danger of his body exploding. But with the pure yang energy rushing through his body, his meridians had been widened by a third. This kind of tearing pain almost made him faint, but his willpower was extraordinary, so he forcibly resisted it. Tang Zheng, you cannot die. You still have a great responsibility on your shoulders. The life and death of countless people are related to you. You must survive. He secretly warned himself, and his consciousness was gradually pulled back from his wandering state to reality. The scene in front of him became clear. His eyes suddenly opened wide as he looked at Yi Dingdang on the ground. He loudly shouted, Dingdang, what happened to you? He picked up Yi Dingdang and found that her aura was unstable and very weak. His expression changed as he asked, Dingdang, what happened? Yi Dingdang was still conscious, so she weakly said, seeing that you're fine, I'm relieved. Tang Zheng's head trembled as he suddenly remembered the energy that had neutralized the pure yang energy. Wasn't that pure yin energy? In this sealed environment, where could there be pure yin energy? Besides Yi Dingdang, who else could provide it? He immediately realized that he must have absorbed too much pure yin energy, causing Yi Dingdang to become like this. He investigated a bit and found that the pure yin energy in Yi Dingdang's body was very weak, almost negligible. Of course, he knew how important pure yin energy was to women. In the past, he had only absorbed a small portion of their pure yin energy. The harmony between yin and yang was beneficial to both parties. This time, he had drained the pond to catch all the fish. The severe consequences could be imagined. She was harmed by me. As if he had been struck by lightning, his entire body began to tremble. Don't be like this. Seeing his remorseful appearance, Yi Dingdang mustered all the strength in her body, stuttering as she tried to persuade him with difficulty. Before she could finish speaking, she had used up all of her strength and almost fainted. Don't speak. I'm here. I'll definitely save you. Tang Zheng tightly hugged her and gently comforted her. Yi Dingdang's lips slightly curled, revealing a happy and sweet smile. Lu Wuxin continuously activated the array, injecting pure yang energy into the four symbols venerable. When she saw the four symbols venerable stop, she knew that her plan had succeeded and could not help but reveal a happy expression. Ha ha ha, Tang Zheng, you're dead for sure this time. Lu Wuxin was very clear how dangerous the situation was after the pure yang energy erupted. Tang Zheng had absorbed so much pure yang energy, and without pure yin energy to balance it, he would definitely die. Let's see how you're going to ruin our plans now. Although we've lost a life totem, we still have other life totems that can gather the soul of the Golden Crow and revive the Yellow Emperor. Coming back from the jaws of death allowed Lu Wuxin to slightly offset the frustration of losing the Heartless Willow. The other former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor cheered and shouted excitedly. Yi Meiyu's eyes flashed with a vicious light. She gritted her teeth and said word by word, Tang Zheng, you only have yourself to blame for going against me. You deserve to die. Bang! With a loud sound, the four symbols venerable took a step forward. This unforeseen event caused the others to feel as if they had been struck by lightning. They looked at the four symbols venerable in a daze as a voice echoed in their minds. What's going on? Didn't Lu Wuxin say that he's dead for sure? Why isn't he dead yet? Could it be that he's struggling on the verge of death? Yes, he must be struggling on the verge of death. An answer appeared in everyone's minds, but they were obviously not confident in their hearts. Bang! With another loud sound, the four symbols venerable took a step forward with his other leg and completely moved. Like a gust of wind, his leg swept towards the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor, as if he was truly sweeping through an army. Crack, crack, crack. A series of bone-breaking sounds rose and fell, causing one to feel a toothache. The former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor were sent flying into the air, screaming miserably as they quickly fell to the ground, wailing non-stop. Seeing this scene, the surviving former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor kept quiet out of fear and subconsciously retreated. They originally thought that victory was in their hands, but they didn't expect that Tang Zheng would actually not die and launch a fierce attack. Lu Wuxin and Yi Meiyu were stunned at the same time. They stared at the four symbols venerable in disbelief and muttered to themselves, why is it like this? Why didn't the pure yang energy cause his body to explode? The pure yang energy contained in the life totem is so powerful, yet he was still able to survive after it was injected into his body. Lu Wuxin could no longer find the words to describe Tang Zheng. He could only feel a stomach full of shock that was difficult to digest. Senior, what should we do now? Yi Meiyu asked anxiously. Lu Wuxin's expression was cold as he gritted his teeth. After a long while, he said, retreat. Tang Zheng was hiding in the body of the four symbols venerable, so she did not know the specific situation. However, from his current situation, she could tell that the plan to explode his body had failed. Tang Zheng would definitely counterattack, and they might not be a match for Tang Zheng. There was no need to make unnecessary sacrifices. This time, they clearly understood that Tang Zheng was far more powerful than they had expected. The enemies of the Yellow Emperor's old subordinates might not only be Qiyu. Perhaps, Tang Zheng would rise up and become their true enemy. This was a very frustrating thing, but they had to admit this reality. Hearing the word, retreat, Yi Meiyu felt an intense unwillingness in her heart, but there was nothing she could do. Even Lu Wuxin insisted on retreating, so what could she do? Did she have to fight to the death? That would only be a meaningless sacrifice. Since she had made her decision, she did not hesitate in the slightest. She turned around and rushed towards the foot of the mountain. The others did not react as quickly as she did. Their movements were a little slower, and what welcomed them was the thunderous attack of the four symbols venerable. The sound of bones and flesh breaking could be heard non-stop. One after another, people flew into the sky and fell down, dying one after another. The fighting strength of the four symbols venerable was clearly stronger than before, causing a chill to rise from the soles of Tang Zheng's feet. This meant that the pure yang energy did not reduce Tang Zheng's fighting strength by much, but instead made him stronger. This was too unbelievable, but looking at the scene in front of him, he had no choice but to admit that this was reality. She couldn't care less about the others. She quickly fled to the foot of the mountain. In this battle, not only did she lose the heartless willow, but her body also suffered quite a bit of damage. When she returned this time, she definitely needed to properly recuperate. Chapter 1207. The four symbols venerable swept away all the old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor at the peak of the mountain, leaving only Lu Wuxin and Yi Meiyu, the two fish that escaped the net. However, they were unable to take advantage of the situation and chase after them, because Tang Zheng had also reached the critical moment of life and death. The pure yang energy contained within the life totem entered his body. Even though Yi Dingdang's pure yin energy helped him to temporarily avoid the danger of his body exploding, the danger still did not disappear. Bang! The four symbols venerables knelt on one knee and lowered their heads. The fierce and domineering aura around them had decreased by 70 to 80%. If Lu Wuxin saw this scene, he would definitely not have escaped so quickly and would have thought of a way to counterattack. The four symbols venerables were like a mask, causing Lu Wuxin to be unable to see through Tang Zheng's real situation and misjudge the situation. Huff! Huff! Tang Zheng gasped for breath, his face pale. He also knelt on one knee, his posture exactly the same as the four symbols venerables. Yi Dingdang looked at him worriedly, but she could not say anything and was powerless to do anything. Tang Zheng's entire body trembled as if he was struggling on the verge of death. He was very clear on his own situation and knew that he could die at any moment. However, he was not willing to give up. He took a deep breath and used his hands to support himself on the ground and stood up. The four symbols venerables stood up at the same time as him. With a thought, Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang retreated from the four symbols venerables' body. The four symbols venerables were kept into Sumer world. He stood on the mountain top, the biting cold mountain wind ruffling his clothes. Yi Dingdang lay on the side, her eyes open with difficulty as she stared at him without blinking. Dingdang, I will definitely protect you back and find a way to cure you. Tang Zheng vowed solemnly. Yi Dingdang blinked, not doubting his words at all, but she was more worried about his physical condition. Tang Zheng read her thoughts and the corner of his mouth opened, revealing a bitter smile. He lightly brushed the hair in front of her forehead and said, "Don't worry, I am an unkillable cockroach. I won't die so easily." He took out his phone and dialed the number of his home. After a few beeps, a clear but dignified voice rang out. "Empyrean Fairy, please send someone from home to pick me up. Something has happened here and I can't leave unharmed for the time being." Tang Zheng said concisely. The Empyrean maiden seemed to be very surprised. She asked, "What happened?" "You'll know when someone from my family comes. I'm here. The sooner you get here, the better." Tang Zheng told the Empyrean Fairy's location. With her and her family's intelligence, they would be able to accurately find him. Empyrean Fairy did not ask further, but her heart trembled. Tang Zheng had never asked for help so weakly before. He must have encountered something very serious, so there was no time to lose. The longer he delayed, the more dangerous it would be. Her relationship with Tang Zheng was very subtle. Under the same roof, they met each other day and night. They were no longer ordinary friends. However, after hearing this news, she did not have the time to tell anyone else. She impatiently left the capital and flew straight to her destination. The sky darkened and brightened. Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang stayed on the peak of the mountain for an entire night. There were no traces of people, and there were no wild beasts either. Tang Zheng lit up a bonfire to drive away the cold for Yi Dingdang. His condition was simply too terrible. There was no way for him to bring her down the mountain safely, so he might as well stay on the mountain and wait for his family. Moreover, Lu Wuxin and Yi Meiyu were extremely cunning. If they were to ambush him at the foot of the mountain, with his current strength, he might not be their match. Therefore, the most effective method was to deal with all changes by sticking to the status quo. Lu Wuxin and Yi Meiyu had indeed not escaped far. They had been hiding at the foot of the mountain for a long time, but they did not see Tang Zheng coming down the mountain. However, they did not dare to rashly go up the mountain, as they were worried that they would not be able to go down the mountain. The two of them hesitated for a long time, but in the end, they did not have the courage to go up the mountain to investigate, so they turned and left. In the middle of the night, the two of them met up with the rest of the group. Seeing the two of them in such a sorry state, Mo Xie's expression changed slightly, but he did not immediately flare up. After the others had all left, he asked in a deep voice, "What happened?" Lu Wuxin lowered his head dejectedly, and told the whole story with righteous indignation. When Mo Xie heard this, his long eyebrows trembled non-stop. His eyes overflowed with a bright light, as if a sharp sword light was about to fly out from his pupils. "Tang Zheng actually knows our plan?" "Yes, he guessed it word for word." Lu Wuxin was also in disbelief. Where did he get this information from? Mo Xia asked, his eyes burning as he stared at Lu Wuxin. Only the two of them knew about this plan, but an outsider knew about the details. Lu Wuxin squinted his eyes and stared back at Mo Xia. Mo Xia's expression relaxed, and said, "Of course it can't be the two of us." Mo Xia could not believe others, but he would not believe that Lu Wuxin and Tang Zheng had colluded in private. This was because he understood Lu Wuxin very well. Lu Wuxin's loyalty to the Yellow Emperor could be seen by the heavens and earth, and would not change. Then how did he know? Yi Meiyu already knew about their plan. Although she was somewhat dissatisfied with them hiding this matter from her, she did not dare to say anything. Seeing that the two of them had fallen into silence, she could not help but ask curiously. Mo Xia looked at her deeply and asked, "What do you think?" Yi Meiyu was startled, and said resentfully, "This junior is ignorant, how could I know?" Mo Xia sighed inwardly, thinking that you are not being modest. Back then, when Nightmare chose you as his disciple, I'm afraid it was not the best choice. Mo Xia was able to see through people, and most people would not be able to escape his fiery golden eyes. Although Yi Meiyu had been acting all this time, deliberately concealing her actions and true style, she still gave herself away and did not escape Mo Xia's eyes. Mo Xia gradually understood this successor of Nightmare Lord. She was indeed not a person with much intelligence and wisdom. It could even be said that she was sometimes stupid. She was narrow-minded and could not achieve great goals. However, Mo Xia did not point it out. He needed Yi Meiyu's strength. Back then, Nightmare Lord played a pivotal role under the Yellow Emperor, and Nightmare Lord's successor would naturally play a pivotal role in the future. After all, Lu Wuxin was not a stupid person like Yi Meiyu. He was experienced and knowledgeable, and after Mo Xia's words, his heart suddenly lit up and he said, "Could it be that he has an expert guiding him from behind?" Mo Xia looked at Lu Wuxin with admiration. As expected of an old friend, they had thought of the same thing. Lu Wuxin could see through Mo Xia's thoughts from his reaction, and it was actually the same as hers. She quickly asked, "Then which expert is guiding him from behind? Could it be that Empyrean fairy?" They knew very little about the Empyrean fairy, as the Empyrean fairy was a person who appeared long after they died. Mo Xia muttered to himself for a while, then shook his head bitterly, "I don't think so. Doesn't look like." Lu Wuxin looked at him in astonishment. Other than the Empyrean fairy, who else could it be? If it was Qiyu, he might be able to see through our plan, but Qiyu and Tang Zheng have already broken off, so it is impossible for him to be in cahoots. Then it must be someone else, but we have not seen any other experts appear in Tang Zheng's life. Lu Wuxin muttered to himself, constantly looking for flaws and key points. Mo Xia still couldn't see through the mystery and helplessly said, "There will be a day when the truth will surface. Since our plan has been exposed, there's no time to lose. We can't afford to slack off. Send everyone to collect the remaining pure yang energy in the life totem as quickly as possible. We can't afford to make any more mistakes this time." Mo Xia's orders were unquestionable, and Lu Wuxin had no objections. He nodded heavily and passed down the order. The Yellow Emperor's old subordinates immediately took action, setting out through the night and rushing to the remaining vitality totems. Lu Wuxin's injuries were not light, so he had no choice but to stay behind and recuperate while waiting for the good news. Mo Xia stood in the darkness, looking up at the stars in the sky. The starry sky had already returned to its appearance from hundreds of thousands of years ago. There was no fog, and the sky was clear. He could clearly see the stars in the sky. Mo Xia couldn't help but think of the scene he had seen under the Tree of Life. That colossus, the Azura, had made his heart palpitate. That big fellow and Tang Zheng were in cahoots. This time, Tang Zheng had not taken out that killing weapon, which meant he had not reached the end of his rope. That made it even harder for people to see through Tang Zheng. He was not like other celestials. Once they absorbed a large amount of pure yang energy, they would die on the spot, their bodies exploding. But Tang Zheng had broken this curse. This puzzled Mo Xia, and he had no choice but to re-evaluate Tang Zheng. This minor character he had never paid attention to before had ruined his plans time and time again, and each time, his strength was more shocking than the last. This was karmic luck. Mo Xia believed in karmic luck. If a person who was not very strong had karmic luck and some true ability, they would definitely become an ambitious and ruthless character. They might even become the ruler of a region. Back then, the Yellow Emperor's karmic luck was better than Qi Yu's. That was why he had won and Qi Yu had lost. Mo Xia had no choice but to admit that even if Tang Zheng was not as strong as the Yellow Emperor, his karmic luck was not much worse. Could it be that in the ancient era, Qi Yu was their enemy, and now that it was the new era, they would have a new enemy? Tang Zheng? Mo Xia had a huge question mark in his heart. Regardless of whether Tang Zheng was a new enemy or not, they could not treat him lightly. They had to treat him the same as Qi Yu. Furthermore, he decided to silently investigate the expert behind Tang Zheng. If he could find this expert, perhaps he would be able to accurately assess Tang Zheng's strength and not be caught off guard. Expert? I want to see how strong you are. All kinds of experts from the ancient era have been revived one by one. Perhaps the expert beside him is one of them. If I catch him, then I will definitely have a good chat with him. Let me see what kind of person he is, to actually dare to ruin my good fortune. Chapter 1208. Early in the morning, the sky was turning white. A red sun peeked out from behind the clouds, revealing a shy face. A person covered in morning dew flew over from the horizon. In the blink of an eye, she stepped on the clouds and landed on the peak of the mountain. The mountain breeze blew her snow-white dress, making her look like a fairy who had descended to the mortal world. The Empyrean fairy's eyes were like torches as she scanned the mountain peak. Everything was reflected in her eyes. Even the crystal-clear dewdrops on the leaves did not escape her eyes. She immediately saw Tang Zheng standing proudly at the edge of the cliff like a statue. His body was tall and straight, as if he could support the heavens. Yi Dingdang was leaning against his side. Her expression was dispirited and her eyes were blurred. She looked listless. The Empyrean fairy heaved a sigh of relief. As long as the two of them were still alive, the situation was not too bad. Tang Zheng. She called out subconsciously. Tang Zheng's stiff expression suddenly relaxed. He slowly turned around and looked straight at the Empyrean fairy. He felt relieved. A relaxed smile appeared on Tang Zheng's face. You are finally here. What's wrong? The Empyrean fairy asked impatiently. Tang Zheng opened his mouth, trying to explain the reason, but when the words reached his mouth, he was unable to say them out loud, as they were stuck in his throat, and a strong urge to vomit hit his heart. Pfft! He spat out a mouthful of blood. Tang Zheng's face instantly turned pale. This was because he was trying his best to suppress the pure yang energy in his body, bitterly holding on, but when he saw the ninth heaven mystical maiden, his body and mind relaxed, and the pure yang energy went berserk, causing him to instantly vomit blood. The Empyrean fairy was shocked when she saw this. She shouted, "What's wrong with you?" With a slip of her feet, the ninth heaven mysterious maiden flew in front of Tang Zheng and hugged him, preventing him from falling to the ground. I absorbed the life totem's pure yang energy. My pure yang energy erupted, said Tang Zheng with difficulty. The life totem's pure yang energy? The Empyrean maiden was shocked. She lowered her head and looked at the mountain peak under her feet. She recalled the full view of the mountain peak that she had just seen from midair. Although she was a virgin, she was not an ignorant little girl. She knew clearly what the shape of the mountain peak was. She knew a bit about the life totem. However, in her era, the life totem was no longer popular, so she did not pay much attention to it. Now that she heard Tang Zheng mention it, she suddenly realized that this mountain peak was an ancient life totem. It gathered the pure yang energy of heaven and earth. Tang Zheng was also a celestial with the 9 yang saint body. It was easy to imagine how dangerous it would be for him to absorb so much pure yang energy. She glanced at Yi Dingdang beside her and with a flash of inspiration, she immediately understood what was going on with her. This was the result of her absorbing too much of her pure Yin energy. She did not sense any pure Yin energy from Yi Dingdang's body. It could be seen that almost all of her pure Yin energy had been absorbed. Tang Zheng collapsed in the Empyrean fairy's embrace. His face gradually turned from pale to red. His meridians appeared under his skin like little snakes swimming under his skin. That was pure yang energy swimming through his meridians. His meridians gradually swelled up. The Empyrean fairy felt like she was hugging a huge furnace. It was incomparably hot and dry, as if this furnace could explode at any moment. Tang Zheng's consciousness gradually became hazy. He felt like he was walking through a sea of flames. Each flame seemed to want to devour him. The heart-wrenching pain almost caused him to faint. Hiss! He constantly sucked in cold air. Even the cool air was unable to cancel out the heat of the pure yang energy. The flames seemed like they wanted to burst out of his meridians and ignite his entire body. "Please, save him," a weak voice rang out. It was like a soft murmur, begging the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy glanced to the side and saw Yi Dingdang lying to the side. She was using all her strength to look at her with a pleading gaze. That voice had clearly come from her. She was already extremely weak. Saying those words had exhausted all her strength. Her own life was in danger, but she did not forget Tang Zheng. This sincere feeling moved the Empyrean fairy. Usually, Yi Dingdang was a carefree person. She rarely showed such sincere and meticulous feelings and thoughts. This greatly exceeded the Empyrean fairy's expectations. "Don't worry. With me around, he definitely won't die," the Empyrean fairy promised firmly. With her promise, Yi Dingdang felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off her shoulders. She knew the Empyrean fairy's strength too well. She was a woman of her word. Tang Zheng's life was no longer in danger. However, Tang Zheng's pure yang energy had erupted. What could she do? The Empyrean fairy's expression turned serious. She stared straight at Tang Zheng. The expression in her eyes fluctuated. Since she had made a promise, she naturally had to save him at all costs. However, the eruption of pure yang energy was not an ordinary injury. The treatment method was completely different. She must have enough pure yin energy to achieve a balance between yin and yang. Only then can she suppress his pure yang energy and save his life. Yi Dingdang no longer has any pure yin energy. Then, there's only me. She knew what this meant. She had a pure body. This purity had been preserved for thousands of years. Countless people wanted to taint it, but it was all wishful thinking. Among them, Qin Shi Huang was the most fanatical. Qin Shi Huang did not succeed until his death. She looked at Tang Zheng with shining eyes. His delicate and handsome face was 100 times better than Qin Shi Huang's. He was rather similar to the ideal husband in her childhood fantasy. However, she was the daughter of the Emperor of Heaven. Her status was noble. Even if Tang Zheng was outstanding in all aspects, she would not throw herself at him. However, the situation was different now. If she did not take the initiative, would she let Tang Zheng take the initiative? Of course not. He had already lost consciousness and was like a puppet. Everything had to be done by her. Thinking of this, her snow-white cheeks could not help but blush. She gritted her teeth and her hands unconsciously clenched into fists. Her palms were sweaty. She hugged Tang Zheng and moved her feet. With a whoosh, a cool breeze blew past. She and Tang Zheng had already disappeared. In the next second, they jumped off the cliff. Yi Dingdang clearly saw this scene. She opened her mouth but did not shout. She knew that the Empyrean fairy was going to save Tang Zheng. However, she did not know how the Empyrean fairy was going to save him. In her impression, the Empyrean fairy's cultivation was so high that she definitely had countless methods to save him. She did not know. Facing Tang Zheng's situation, the Empyrean fairy only had one way to save him. The Empyrean fairy had the 9 Yin saint body. It was a body that corresponded to the 9 Yang saint body. It contained extremely strong Yin energy and was also an excellent body for cultivation. However, it was also very easy to die prematurely. The Empyrean fairy was the daughter of the Emperor of Heaven. Her status was noble and she had avoided a premature death. The 9 Yin saint body was most suitable for the 9 Yang saint body to balance the Yin and Yang energy and neutralize the pure Yang energy. The Empyrean fairy knew this very well. Therefore, she had absolute confidence that she could save Tang Zheng. However, the scene of saving someone was not suitable for children. It was even more inappropriate to show it in front of others. She hugged Tang Zheng and jumped off the cliff. Her body floated in midair. The white clouds in the sky surged and quickly converged toward the two of them. In an instant, the two of them disappeared into the white clouds. The white clouds were like a curtain, blocking the view of others. In the white clouds, the Empyrean fairy stared at Tang Zheng without blinking. She gently bent down and planted a kiss on Tang Zheng's lips. The Empyrean fairy had never been so close to a man before. When their lips touched, she felt as if she was struck by lightning. She had a strange feeling that she had never felt before. This feeling quickly spread from the kiss to her limbs and bones. It spread through her meridians and soon enveloped her entire body. This feeling is so strange, a voice sounded in her heart. Of course, she knew about the matters between men and women. So this was what it felt like. Entering you really did have a captivating charm. It made her want to go one step further and experience this feeling that she had never experienced before. She breathed out like orchids. Her heart was beating so fast that it felt like it was going to jump out of her throat. Her heart was swaying and her soul was leaving her body. She suddenly bit her tongue and immediately woke up. She realized that at this juncture, she should not have such random thoughts. Calm down, you want to save someone. She kept telling herself. The Empyrean fairy was also a human. She had 7 emotions and 6 desires. In many aspects, she was no different from a normal woman. This kiss seemed to have opened up a new world for her life. She took a deep breath. Her lips did not separate. Instead, she held her breath and circulated her energy. She urged the pure Yin energy in her body to flow into Tang Zheng's body. The pure Yin energy in her body had always been in a controlled state. At this moment, the pure Yin energy was being urged. Like 10,000 horses galloping, it crazily rushed into Tang Zheng's body. The pure Yin energy was actually in danger of going out of control. It seemed like it was going to break free from her control at any moment. She was shocked. This was something that she did not expect. All these years, the pure Yin energy had always been under her control. There was no sign of it going out of control. But why was it that after she urged it, there were signs of it going out of control? She was smart. After a while, she thought of the key point. Her eyes fell on Tang Zheng's face. This was definitely because of Tang Zheng. The pure Yang energy in his body was like a bomb that detonated her pure Yin energy. That was why there were signs of it going out of control. In order to save him, I actually put myself in danger. Her face was serious, but she was helpless. This was already an arrow on the string. She could not stop. She could only continue forward. As for the rebellion of the pure Yin energy, she could only think of a way to make up for it later. Of course, Tang Zheng did not know about all of this. He only felt a cool feeling coming from his mouth, as if a person who was about to be dehydrated immediately tasted the taste of water. His throat moved, and he swallowed in large mouthfuls. The mighty pure Yin energy was quickly transmitted from his throat to every meridian and cell. The restless pure Yang energy suddenly froze. It quickly merged with the pure Yin energy and gradually calmed down. Tang Zheng let out a comfortable groan. His hand subconsciously hugged the Empyrean fairy. Their skin was tightly pressed together. The pure Yin energy entered Tang Zheng's pores from the Empyrean fairy's pores. Chapter 1209. Tang Zhang's hands became restless, and he subconsciously hugged the Empyrean fairy's body. Her snow-white skin was full of elasticity, and Tang Zhang's palms were pressed together without any reservation. The Empyrean fairy's body trembled, and she couldn't help but tense up like a bowstring that was pulled into a full moon. Her pretty face was full of lust, and her pink face was full of anger, which perfectly explained her reaction. She stared at Tang Zhang without blinking, and a murderous aura flowed out from between her eyebrows, which made people shudder. Tang Zhang was in a daze, and he didn't notice it at all. His hands became more restless, and they instinctively went into her clothes. The Empyrean fairy bit her lips with her snow-white teeth and squeezed out 2 words from between her teeth. "Stop." Tang Zhang turned a deaf ear to her and continued to do as he pleased. The Empyrean fairy wasn't a weak woman. Seeing that her persuasion didn't work, and in fact, she knew that she couldn't persuade him, so she immediately took action by force. She grabbed Tang Zhang's hand, and Tang Zhang struggled with all his strength, but he couldn't break free and had to give up. "I promise to save you, but I won't let you do whatever you want," she whispered to herself. She had the 9 En's sacred body, which was different from the ordinary Purine body. She could freely control the Purine force in her body, just like how Tang Zhang controlled the pure yang force. Therefore, she could let the Purine force enter Tang Zhang's body without too much physical contact. Of course, Tang Zhang needed too much Purine force. If her hands were to be crossed, it would be very time-consuming for the transfer, and kissing could obviously speed up the process. In order to save him, she sacrificed her first kiss, which she had kept for thousands of years. How could she let Tang Zhang do anything else? Although Tang Zhang's body was under control, the Purine force was continuously flowing into his lips, making him feel relaxed and happy. His lips opened and closed, making a sizzling sound. The Empyrean fairy's heart skipped a beat. Her face became redder and redder, and her breathing quickened involuntarily. A primitive impulse was born from the bottom of her heart and spread throughout her body, as if wanting to devour her entire body and mind. She had unknowingly let go of Tang Zhang's hand. Having regained his freedom, Tang Zhang burst out with high enthusiasm. His hands tightly hugged the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy tensed up, but soon softened, as if she had melted under Tang Zhang's fingertips and palms. Tang Zhang's hands sneaked under her skirt. Her smooth skin fell into Tang Zhang's palm, as if it was about to be ignited. The Empyrean fairy was shocked. She found that her body was heating up, as if it was not her own. It was as if she was about to lose control. This feeling that she had never felt before made her instinctively alert. Her brain immediately rang an alarm bell for herself. Her eyes shone brightly, and she suddenly trembled. With a low roar, she walked out of her daze. Her eyes were like bright stars in the night sky as she looked at Tang Zhang with burning eyes. Tang Zhang's expression was blank, but he subconsciously froze under the gaze of the Empyrean fairy. He stared into her eyes, and the blank look in his eyes gradually became clear. The Empyrean fairy's eyes seemed to have magic. Like a sharp blade, they pierced through the absurd thoughts in Tang Zhang's mind. The Empyrean fairy was relieved, but when she saw Tang Zhang's eyes gradually returning to normal, she panicked and subconsciously separated her lips from Tang Zhang. Without the injection of pure yin energy, the pure yang energy in Tang Zhang's body became restless again. His face showed pain, and his body twisted as if he was about to explode. The Empyrean fairy was shocked. She quickly leaned forward and pressed her lips on Tang Zhang's. When their lips touched, the continuous pure yin energy was transmitted through the gap between their lips. Tang Zhang immediately calmed down and his restless emotions were instantly soothed. However, Tang Zhang's eyes became clear. They were not blinded by emotions and pure yang energy. They were as bright as the stars. He stared at the Empyrean fairy with burning eyes, and a look of disbelief gradually emerged from the depths of his eyes. He looked at the Empyrean fairy in horror. They were so close, and the key was that their lips were firmly kissed. This was something he had never thought would happen. Although he knew that the Empyrean fairy had the 9 sacred body and would be of great use to him, her identity was so noble that he did not have the slightest improper thoughts. In the past, Qin Shi Huang also wanted to touch the Empyrean fairy, but in the end, he died. How could Tang Zheng have thoughts about her so easily? Moreover, the relationship between the two of them was not the same as before. Unknowingly, they had formed an alliance and cultivated a deep comradeship. He would not destroy this rare relationship. However, when he saw the scene of him and the Empyrean fairy kissing, everything fell apart. His brain almost crashed, and he did not understand why it had become like this. The Empyrean fairy also noticed the situation with Tang Zheng. His clear eyes were like steel needles that pierced her heart. She subconsciously turned her head to avoid his eyes. She no longer cared about the pure yang energy in Tang Zheng's body. She took a few steps back and widened the distance between them. Tang Zheng felt that the pure yang energy in his body was suddenly startled and showed signs of going berserk again. He had already regained consciousness and hurriedly activated his mysterious art to suppress the signs. He had absorbed too much pure yin energy from the Empyrean fairy. Although it was not enough to completely balance his pure yang energy, it was enough to temporarily get him out of danger. A pair of eyes stared at each other like this. The air was dead silent, and even the sound of the wind had disappeared. Only the white clouds around them gently drifted, as if they were each other's situation. On the surface, they seemed to be motionless, but in reality, their hearts were in turmoil. No one knew how many waves had been stirred up. This. Tang Zheng's throat moved, and he spat out a word with difficulty. The Empyrean fairy's face turned cold, and she interrupted him. I was trying to save you. This is a temporary measure. Don't let your imagination run wild. She seemed to be afraid that Tang Zheng would say something absurd, so she spoke the truth first. She really did not have any improper thoughts about Tang Zheng, and it was all a temporary measure to save him. But after the two kissed, a strange thought appeared in her heart. She was actually immersed in it, unable to extricate herself. Could it be that she really enjoyed that kind of situation? No. This must be an illusion. She had cultivated for thousands of years, and had never wavered in the slightest. How could she be shaken just because of this? She absolutely would not allow it. Hearing this, Tang Zheng's thoughts were complicated. He seemed to be a little disappointed, but also a little relieved. He could not tell if he was relieved by this answer, or if it was some other feeling. However, he immediately composed himself and calmly said, I understand. Thank you for saving my life. I am unable to repay you, but if you have any orders, I will not dare to disobey. Seeing his serious appearance without any other thoughts, the Empyrean fairy felt a sense of loss. It was incomparably complicated and indescribable. Chapter 12:10. The ambiguity between the two was restrained by each other and did not continue to ferment. As their eyes met, everything seemed to have quietly returned to normal. In reality, the two people involved did not know that two strange seeds had taken root and sprouted in their hearts. The Empyrean fairy turned and flew towards the cliff with Tang Zheng following behind like a shadow. Seeing Yi Dingdang, Tang Zheng hurriedly rushed over to help her up and asked with concern, How are you feeling? Yi Dingdang stared straight at Tang Zheng. Seeing that he was safe and sound, she let out a sigh of relief as a smile appeared at the corners of her eyes. She opened her mouth and squeezed out two words with difficulty, I'm fine. You call this fine? Tang Zheng said in pain as he suddenly turned his head to look at the Empyrean fairy and asked, Can you save her? The Empyrean fairy bent down and placed her fingers on Yi Dingdang's pulse. After a while, she frowned and said, The pure yin energy in her body has already been exhausted. There's nothing I can do to save her. After saying this, she let out a long sigh. Of course she knew that Yi Dingdang's pure yin energy had been completely absorbed by Tang Zheng. This was equivalent to Yi Dingdang using her own life in exchange for Tang Zheng's life. This great kindness and love was truly moving. The Empyrean fairy looked at Yi Dingdang with sparkling eyes, as if she wanted to discern from her reaction where her courage and perseverance came from. In the end, she did not find the answer she wanted. She saw that Yi Dingdang's eyes were filled with tenderness as she looked at Tang Zheng. Hearing this, Tang Zheng felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His body shook violently as he asked in a trembling voice, "How could it be like this? Is there really no way at all?" The Empyrean fairy looked at Yi Dingdang with pity and shook her head regretfully. "There really is no other way. Pure Yin energy is the foundation of a woman. Once the foundation is damaged, then the person will naturally be ruined." Tang Zheng felt as if the sky was about to collapse. He had originally vowed that he would cure Yi Dingdang, but he never expected that he would be unable to do so. This was equivalent to giving Yi Dingdang a death notice. No. He shook his head violently, unwilling to believe this cruel reality. There must be a way. His eyes burned as he stared at the Empyrean fairy. He unconsciously grabbed her hand and said excitedly, "You must have another way, right? Even if there is only a sliver of hope, no matter the price, I am willing to try." The Empyrean fairy's hands were caught. She struggled slightly before she managed to free herself from Tang Zheng's grasp. Her eyes twitched violently. She seemed to be moved by Tang Zheng's attitude. After hesitating for a moment, she gave a cruel answer. "I have no other way." Yi Dingdang looked at Tang Zheng's soulless and pained appearance, and a tear fell from the corner of her eye. She wasn't crying because she was afraid that she wouldn't live for long, but because she felt sorry for Tang Zheng. She took a deep breath with difficulty and used all of her strength to stutter, "Tang Zheng, don't be like this. This is my life. As long as you always have me in your heart, it doesn't matter. I am willing." "No." Tang Zheng tightly hugged her and forcefully shook his head. His neck seemed like it was going to break. "I want you to always be with me. In the past, I was always busy and didn't have time to be with you. From now on, I want to spend more time with you. You can't leave me and I won't allow you to leave me." These words were very overbearing. When Yi Dingdang heard this, the corners of her eyes bloomed with a smile, but she didn't have the strength to respond. She just stared at him without blinking. The complex emotions in her eyes were very moving. Tang Zheng looked at Yi Dingdang and then stared at the Empyrean fairy. Seeing that she was helpless, his heart was like dead ashes. It was as if he had fallen into a bottomless abyss. Yi Dingdang could feel Tang Zheng's despair and pain, but she was also helpless. She didn't even have the strength to speak again. Tang Zheng carried Yi Dingdang and walked step by step to the foot of the mountain. He didn't say a word. The Empyrean fairy quickly chased after him. She wanted to ask what was going on this time, but she swallowed her words. Now was clearly not a good time to ask these questions. The three of them accompanied each other silently as they traveled through the night and night back to Beijing. When they returned home, everyone in the house saw the scene of Tang Zheng carrying Yi Dingdang. They were all stunned and began to ask about the reason. Seeing that Tang Zheng didn't say a word, everyone looked at the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy shrugged her shoulders and helplessly shook her head. She also didn't completely understand what was going on. On the way back, Tang Zheng didn't say a word. He was completely immersed in pain. His every expression and every action was filled with deep pain. It made people feel as if they were in his shoes. The Empyrean fairy suddenly had a flash of inspiration. It was as if she had been enlightened. She actually understood the problem that had been troubling her. Yi Dingdang was willing to sacrifice so many people for Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was like a walking corpse, suffering great pain. These two people had sacrificed themselves for each other and paid a great price. All of this was because of love. The Empyrean fairy had never experienced love before. She also never thought that love would have such great magic that it would make people willingly make such great sacrifices and changes. However, looking at the two of them, she seemed to understand that the magic of love was far beyond her imagination. If I could also experience the magic of love, what kind of scene would that be? A strange thought suddenly appeared in her mind. It gave her a fright, but she quickly suppressed this thought. She had been chased for over 1,000 years. How could she change so easily? Fang Shishir rushed over and firmly grabbed Yi Dingdang's hand. She loudly shouted, "Ding Dang, what's wrong?" Yi Dingdang opened her eyes and looked at Fang Shishir. She lightly blinked her eyes and pretended to be relaxed as she revealed a playful expression. It was as if she wanted to comfort Fang Shishir. However, Fang Shishir saw her like this and felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. She and Yi Dingdang had unknowingly changed from rivals in love to sisters. Their hearts had long since walked together. They tightly hugged each other and accompanied each other. Tang Dehai's expression was solemn as he walked over. Seeing that Tang Zheng was silent and didn't reply to the other people's questions, he asked, "Little Zheng, tell us, what happened?" Hearing his grandfather's words, Tang Zheng finally raised his head and swept his gaze across everyone's faces. Everyone deeply felt the sorrow in his heart and their hearts were filled with sorrow. "When we went to the Ye family, we discovered a strange phenomenon." Tang Jing explained in detail that they had gone to the Ye family, then followed Yi Meiyu's magic all the way and discovered the plot of the Yellow Emperor's old subordinates. Furthermore, they had a great battle. Tang Zheng's pure yang energy had exploded, and Yi Dingdang was willing to sacrifice herself to save his life. Chapter 12:11. Everyone stared fixedly at Yi Dingdang. Yi Dingdang's cheeks flushed red as she lowered her eyes in embarrassment. She thought to herself, "How can I be as good as he says?" But she couldn't say a single word. The other point also attracted everyone's attention, especially when Tian Chanzi heard that Yi Meiyu had controlled the Ye family. He was extremely surprised. That little girl has actually become so powerful. Tang Jing nodded his head heavily. Yi Meiyu is no longer the same as before, and she has successfully escaped this time. If we meet her in the future, we must be careful, as Heart's Dream's traceless spell is not ordinary. If we are to be tricked by her, we will become her slave. Tian Chanzi coldly snorted, "She won't have that chance. I know a little about the life totem you're talking about. There are still so many life totems left, so it's impossible for us to defeat them one by one." "Wouldn't they succeed?" Tian Chanzi said worriedly. However, Tang Jing did not give up and said, "If you don't work hard, how do you know you won't succeed? Once they gather enough pure yang energy, the soul of the golden crow will reappear in the world. No one wants to see that happen." Tian Chanzi stared at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze, and finally nodded his head and said, "All right, I'll listen to you." After pausing for a moment, he said, "Then why are you fine after absorbing so much pure yang energy?" Tang Zheng's eyes flashed, and he said without hesitation, "I won't die for the time being." The pure yang energy in his body had not been calmed down for the time being, but he knew that the pure yang energy had indeed increased. Even with the pure yin energy neutralizing it, the pure yang energy in his body had increased, and once it erupted again, he could not predict what would happen. However, now was not the time to think so much. He had to think of a way to save people and stop the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates. "We don't have enough manpower. If we reveal this news to Chiyu, he will definitely be very interested." Empyrean Fairy had an idea and said thoughtfully. The others' eyes lit up, especially Tian Chanzi, who immediately agreed, "That's a good idea. When the sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman will benefit." Tang Zheng was not a person who was bound by formalities. Now that the situation on his side was not optimistic, it was a good idea to use Chiyu with a small plan. "All right, let's reveal the news to him." Tang Zheng agreed. Although Chiyu's whereabouts were mysterious, Tang Zheng believed that Chiyu would definitely leave an informant and keep an eye on him. Therefore, it was not difficult to reveal this information to Chiyu. Yi Dingdang became like this in order to save Tang Zheng. The old man's heart was heavy. She was a big girl, but in the end she became like this. It was easy to imagine the burden on the old man's shoulders. "I know, grandfather." Tang Zheng nodded his head with a heavy face. He immediately gave Yi Tianlei and Feng Xinyang a call. After saying a few simple words, he hung up the phone. Everyone in the room had worried expressions. Fang Shishir accompanied Yi Dingdang by her side, secretly crying. She was a strong girl, but seeing her best friend like this made her heart feel like it was being stabbed by a knife. It was more painful than what happened to her. A moment later, Yi Tianlei and Feng Xinyang rushed in. Feng Xinyang shouted, "What happened to Dingdang?" When she saw Yi Dingdang lying on the sofa, motionless, with a weak breath, Feng Xinyang's face changed. She rushed over like the wind and grabbed Yi Dingdang's hand. She asked with concern, "Dingdang, what happened to you?" Yi Dingdang blinked her eyes and tried to squeeze out a smile, but there was no reaction. Feng Xinyang and Yi Tianlei looked at each other, their hearts thumping as they revealed an aghast expression. As parents, they were most afraid of seeing this scene. The two realized that the situation this time was not normal and that something serious had happened to their daughter. Yi Tianlei, as a man, was relatively steady. He looked at his daughter and his gaze fell on Tang Zheng. Seeing his dignified expression and unconcealable grief, Yi Tianlei's heart immediately sank into the abyss. He took a deep breath and suppressed the emotions in his heart with difficulty. He asked, "Tang Zheng, what exactly happened to Dingdang?" Tang Zheng did not have time to reply before the old man took the initiative and said with incomparable shame, "Tianlei, I want to solemnly apologize to you. Our family did not protect your precious daughter. She became like this because of little Zheng. We will definitely not shirk the responsibility. Little Zheng will definitely take responsibility to the end." A simple old man did not have many comforting words, and this was the most sincere expression. When Yi Tianlei heard these words, it was as if he was struck by lightning. He understood the seriousness of the situation and his body swayed. In the end, he forced himself not to fall down and said with a trembling voice, "Old man, let's not talk about this first. Let's first figure out what happened." Feng Xinyang called out to her daughter a few times but there was no response. She also raised her head and stared at Tang Zheng, wanting to understand the truth. Tang Zheng explained the whole story in detail and finally said with extreme grief, "Uncle Yi, Aunt Feng, Dingdang became like this because she wanted to save me. I, Tang Zheng, am an indomitable man and will definitely take responsibility to the end. No matter if it is a mountain of blades or a sea of flames, I will definitely save Dingdang. Is there really no other way?" Feng Xinyang asked with a trembling voice. The usually carefree Feng Xinyang's face was heavy and there was a trace of fear on her face. This was the true feelings of a mother. No matter what her usual style was, at this time, her maternal side was naturally exposed. Tang Zheng shook his head. Even the Empyrean fairy did not have a way, what else could he do? However, he did not completely give up hope. If Yi Dingdang was really unfortunate enough to leave this world, then her soul would go to the ghost realm. For her, he was willing to enter the ghost realm once more and plead with Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva to let her be reborn. But there was no doubt that this was the most hopeless method. If she was reborn, perhaps she would not be in this body. Would that still be Yi Dingdang? The soul was, but the body was not. Therefore, it would not be a complete Yi Dingdang. Unless there was no other choice, he would definitely not take this step. But was there any other way? Facing Feng Xinyang's question, Tang Zheng's throat moved. He swallowed his saliva and blurted out, "No dash." Before he could finish the second half of his sentence, he was interrupted by a voice. "Don't jump to conclusions yet. I found a way." This voice was like a bolt of lightning that split open the clouds above his head. His heart tightened and his eyes lit up. He asked with anticipation, "Inner demons, you have a way?" Previously, the inner demons had been silent and the Empyrean fairy had vowed that there was no other way. Tang Zheng had almost forgotten about the inner demons. Chapter 12:12. The inner demons had been silent the whole time, but they suddenly spoke. This meant that they had thought it through carefully. Tang Zheng naturally thought of this point, and his mood became excited. The inner demon's proud voice sounded again, "Who am I? How could such a small matter be difficult for me? Tang Zheng ignored the inner demon's boasting and hurriedly asked, "Then what can we do?" The inner demons muttered, "Find a place of absolute yin and re-inject pure yin energy into Yi Ding Dang." Ah! Tang Zheng was shocked. He had never heard of a place of absolute yin. Where is this place of absolute yin? Look at you making a fuss. What is there to make a fuss about? You have to know that since there is a life totem in this world that gathers pure yang energy, then there will also be a place where pure yin energy gathers. The inner demons explained. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that it made sense. But the key point was that a place of absolute yin was not an ordinary place. It was not easy to find. Do you know where there is a place of absolute yin? Tang Zheng asked the key point. The inner demon stammered, "As long as you put your heart into it, you will find it." Tang Zheng rolled his eyes. The inner demons did not know. Then the chances of finding a place of absolute yin were close to zero. Seeing his silent and uncertain expression, the other people's gazes were all attracted to him. Feng Xinyang was worried about her daughter's safety and asked, "Tang Zheng, is there really no other way?" Tang Zheng seemed to have woken up from a dream. He looked at Feng Xinyang in a daze, wanting to say something but hesitating. "If you have something to say, just say it. Why are you still being so wishy-washy at this time?" Feng Xinyang said sternly. The old man also earnestly advised, "Little Zheng, if you have any ideas or difficulties, just say it. Everyone can pool their wisdom and work together." Tang Zheng pondered for a moment and said, "There is a way, and that is to find a place of extreme yin energy. From there, we can inject pure yin energy into Dingdang's body and let her fully recover." Yin field? Tian Chanzi immediately raised his eyebrows and exclaimed, "The land of extreme yin is the most dangerous place in the world, and very few people know about it. In any case, as far as I know, no one in my generation knew about the yin terminating land." It was said that the yin field was very beneficial to many people who practiced the yin soft cultivation method. It could greatly increase one's power in a short period of time. Of course, there were many dangers in it as well, and the slightest carelessness would cause one to be consigned to eternal damnation. Therefore, the land of extreme yin is a place that people both love and hate. Hearing Tian Chanzi's introduction, everyone's interest was piqued, especially Feng Xinyang and Yi Tianlei, who said at the same time, "No matter how dangerous the land of extreme yin is, as long as there is a chance for Ding Dang, then we will not hesitate even if we have to die 10,000 times. We will definitely not give up." As parents, how could they watch as their daughter's life was hanging by a thread and remain indifferent? Even if there were thousands of difficulties and tens of thousands of dangers, they would still step forward without hesitation. Empyrean Fairy did not say a word, but her expression subtly changed. The others did not notice her change as their attention was firmly attracted by Tang Zheng. Yi Ding Dang heard that it was so dangerous and blinked with all her might, as if she wanted to dissuade her parents from taking the risk, but to no avail. On the contrary, Fang Shishir said with a resolute expression, "For Ding Dang, I will also go to the land of extreme yin. I must find a way to save Ding Dang." Yi Ding Dang heard this and the corners of her eyes flashed with tears. She tried to use her eyes to stop Fang Shishir, but there was no way. "Shishir, if there is a next life, I will definitely be your sister again." Yi Ding Dang silently thought in her heart. These days, she and Fang Shishir were together and understood each other more and more. In the past, although they were classmates, they were like people from two different worlds and did not understand each other that much. Now that they were living under the same roof, getting along day and night, and had a tacit understanding to form a united front, their friendship grew day by day and they had developed into sisters. Seeing everyone's solemn vow, Tang Zheng said solemnly, "Everyone's morale is commendable, but the key is that no one knows where the land of pure yin is. We do not have any clue or direction, we are like headless flies, aimlessly moving around. Although the land of extreme yin is mysterious, there will definitely be some records of it in the long river of history. Let's go through the ancient records and maybe we will find something." Fang Shishir was smart and quick-witted, immediately thinking of a way. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. There were many amazing people in the archaeology department who had read all kinds of historical materials. Maybe they would find something. This made him overjoyed as he hurriedly said, "Everyone, don't worry. I will go back to the school to organize people and investigate where the land of extreme Een is." However, this was a long-term and huge project. It was almost impossible to restore Yi Dingdang in a short period of time. This was a desperate situation, trying to treat a dead horse as a living horse. Wait! Suddenly, a pleasant voice exploded, but it was like rolling thunder that swept over. Empyrean Fairy stood up. Her expression was strange as she looked at Tang Zheng strangely. Tang Zheng's head moved as he asked, "Do you have any ideas?" Empyrean Fairy was not in a hurry to answer, but asked back, "Are you sure that the land of pure Een has a way to save Dingdang?" Hearing her question, Tang Zheng said solemnly, "I'm sure." The inner demons would not speak nonsense. They definitely had 100% certainty. Empyrean Fairy looked deeply at Tang Zheng, but did not ask where his information and confidence came from because she believed in Tang Zheng. She only said meaningfully, "I also don't know of this method. But since you're so confident, you must have a plan. In this world, there are very few places with no Een. Moreover, many of them contain extremely strong Een energy. Once it is injected into the human body, it can make the person lose their mind and finally turn them into a killing machine. Only a pure place with no Een can save Dingdang and eliminate those side effects." Empyrean Fairy said with certainty, which made everyone gasp in admiration. "Fortunately, I know a pure place with no Een that can meet your requirements." The Empyrean Fairy paused for a moment and said proudly. Seeing that everyone was looking at her expectantly, she took a deep breath and finally revealed the answer to the riddle. "Elysium. This is a place with no Een. The main reason why I was able to survive the 9 Een divine bodies tribulation and survive until now is mainly because of Elysium." When the others heard this answer, they were stunned. Tian Chanzi was also stunned. He knew a thing or two about Elysium's illustrious reputation, but it was too mysterious and had long disappeared, so he did not think much about it. Tang Zheng also exclaimed and shouted in shock, "Elysium? Why did you think of Elysium?" Chapter 12-13. The Gate of Heaven was a place of Een elimination and could save Yi Dingdang. This news was beyond everyone's expectations and lit a fire of hope. Everyone looked at the Empyrean Fairy with burning eyes. The Empyrean Fairy glanced at Yi Dingdang and said calmly, "The Gate of Heaven is my father's legacy. If it wasn't to save Dingdang, would never have made it public." The others also understood this logic and were secretly convinced by the 9th Heaven mystical maiden's deep sense of righteousness and generosity. This was especially true for Yi Tianlei and his wife. They took a few steps forward and directly arrived in front of the 9th Heaven mystical maiden. Their words were sincere and incomparably moved as they said, "Fu Yao, thank you. As long as we can save Dingdang, we will work like cows and horses to repay your great kindness." The Empyrean Fairy looked at the two calmly and pointed at Tang Zheng, "You don't have to thank me. Although I know that the Gate of Heaven is a place of Een elimination, I don't know how to save her. You should thank Tang Zheng." Yi Tianlei and his wife quickly turned to look at Tang Zheng. Before they could say anything, Tang Zheng took the initiative and said, "Uncle Yi, Aunt Feng, this is my duty. I won't shirk my duty." Hearing him say this, the two felt relieved. Feng Xinyang nodded secretly. She didn't misjudge him. This handsome young man was affectionate and righteous. She was relieved to entrust her daughter to someone like him. After saying this, Tang Zheng couldn't wait to ask the Empyrean Fairy, "Where is the Gate of Heaven?" "We will go now. The Gate of Heaven is not as simple as you think. It is a place of Een elimination. When my 9 Een saint body broke out, I used a large amount of pure Een energy in the Gate of Heaven to suppress it. Then I was lucky to escape." The Empyrean Fairy explained patiently. "Shouldn't the 9 Een saint body break out with pure Yang energy? Why did you use pure Een energy to suppress it? Isn't this adding fuel to the fire?" Tang Zheng asked in surprise. The others didn't understand what was going on either. They all looked at the Empyrean fairy suspiciously. When things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. Extreme yang produces yin, and extreme yin produces yang. This is interconnected, the Empyrean fairy said concisely. Tian Chanzi looked pensive as he muttered to himself, I've heard of this principle before, but I don't know how it works. Of course there's a secret behind it. Even if a normal person knew this, it would be impossible for them to achieve this effect. My father is extremely capable, which is why he was able to achieve this. The Empyrean fairy said proudly. Since her father had been bestowed the title of Emperor of Heaven, this title was not ordinary. He was definitely not an ordinary person, but a powerful person. Does that mean I can't use your method to absorb more pure yang energy and achieve the goal of balancing yin and yang? Tang Zheng asked in disappointment. Just now, he had thought of this fluke in his mind, but after listening to the Empyrean fairy's explanation, he had to throw this idea out of the window. The Empyrean fairy looked deeply at Tang Zheng. Although she knew that Tang Zheng had always been good at creating miracles, she still didn't think that Tang Zheng had the luck and ability to create such a miracle. Looking at the Empyrean fairy's eyes, although she didn't say a word, Tang Zheng already understood her thoughts. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. He took a deep breath and suppressed this unrealistic and absurd idea. He said, let's not talk about other things for now. Let's go find the gate of heaven first. Saving people is more important. Okay. The Empyrean fairy nodded, the gate of heaven is hidden in the world. I have to lead the way before you can go there. Otherwise, you won't be able to find the way. But one day, the world will change. The gate of heaven will experience the changes of the world. As for what it has become, it is hard for me to predict. Even if there are thousands of difficulties and dangers, even if there are mountains of blades and seas of fire, I still have to go. Tang Zheng said without fear. He had just returned home, but he had to go on a long journey. Time waits for no one. When Yi Ding Dang heard that there was a ray of hope, the flames of hope lit up in her eyes. She looked at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. Tang Zheng gently stroked her forehead and said softly, don't worry. With me here, I will definitely save you. Yi Ding Dang blinked, indicating that she understood. We also want to go. Yi Tianlei and Feng Xinyang said dutifully. Yi Ding Dang was their daughter. Of course, they couldn't stay out of it. Tang Zheng glanced at the Empyrean fairy. Seeing that she didn't object, he also nodded. I'll go too. I can take care of Ding Dang along the way. Feng Shishir volunteered. The others were also eager to go. Tang Zheng was afraid that everyone would rush to go first. If too many people went, there would be too many unknowns. Having more people might not be a good thing, so he hurriedly waved his hand to stop them. There are enough people. Someone must stay at home. Tian Chanzi, you stay at home to protect everyone. If there are any problems, immediately contact us. Tian Chanzi also wanted to see the famous gate of heaven, but he also understood that Tang Zheng's arrangement was very reasonable. It was impossible for there not to be a master at home. Now that they were surrounded by strong enemies, they couldn't let their guard down. Tian Chanzi nodded embarrassedly. He could only accept this arrangement helplessly. Seeing this, the others no longer volunteered. They all comforted them with kind words. This time we are going to see. We won't reach it in 3 or 5 days, so everyone needs to be mentally prepared. The Empyrean fairy suddenly reminded them. See? Yes, the gate of heaven is at the end of the world, where heaven and earth meet. Everyone looked at each other. The ancients would have such a mysterious description, but for the modern people, there was no such thing as the end of the world, where heaven and earth meet, or it could be said that there was a visual error. The Empyrean fairy was influenced by modern knowledge. Obviously, she also understood that this sentence couldn't stand up to scrutiny. She added, in short, it's very far. In ancient times, it would take several months to reach it. Tang Zheng nodded secretly. The ancient people's technology was behind. For the modern people, a few months of sailing could be reached in 10 days. Now, time was tight. 10 days wasn't a short period of time. After they finalized the itinerary, Tang Zheng immediately contacted the Yen family. They needed a large ship to cross the ocean. The Yen family owned a shipping company, so they were naturally the best choice. After the Yen family heard about it, they naturally didn't refuse. A moment later, the Yen family's car stopped outside the villa. Yen Luyun and Yen Qingyi got out of the car and walked straight in. After seeing the two of them, Tang Zheng was shocked. He said, "Why are you here?" The old man heard your anxious tone. Something big must have happened, so he sent me to mediate. It'll be more convenient. Yen Luyun explained. Tang Zheng nodded. This time, they needed to borrow the Yen family's power. If the young master of the Yen family accompanied them, it would be much more convenient. His gaze then fell on Yen Qingyi. He couldn't see through this person who could see the future. Yen Qingyi saw through Tang Zheng's doubts and said, "I saw a door slowly opening in front of you. It was as if there was a voice from the unseen world guiding me, telling me to travel with you this time." Hearing how mysterious her words were, everyone was astonished. However, after seeing Yen Qingyi's prophecy, they didn't dare to underestimate her. Door? What kind of door? The Empyrean fairy frowned and asked. Yen Qingyi glanced at the Empyrean fairy and took out a scroll. There was a huge bronze door drawn on it. It was as if it was supporting the heavens and the earth. It was extremely huge. An invisible pressure made people feel very small. There were also complicated patterns carved on it that flickered with a mysterious light. The Empyrean fairy's gaze was firmly attracted by this painting. She suddenly raised her head and stared at Yen Qingyi with burning eyes and asked, "How do you know about this door?" "This is the image I saw. You are standing in front of this door, as if you want to open it." Yen Qingyi said calmly. "You actually saw the gate of heaven." The Empyrean fairy couldn't hide her shock and muttered to herself. So this is called the Gate of Heaven. What a special name. However, looking at its tall and mighty appearance, it really does look like a door to heaven. Yen Qingyi nodded and analyzed thoughtfully. Hearing the two words Gate of Heaven, Tang Zheng and the others immediately stared at the painting, as if they wanted to firmly imprint its appearance in their minds. This was especially true for Tian Chanzi. He couldn't go to the Gate of Heaven this time, so he especially wanted to see what it looked like. "You said that there was a voice that seemed to be calling you. What was that voice?" The Empyrean fairy frowned and asked in a deep voice. This was related to the Gate of Heaven. This was a relic left by her father, the Emperor of Heaven. Naturally, she would be extremely careful. Yen Qingyi shook her head in disappointment. That voice was too mysterious. I can't explain it clearly. It seemed to jump out from the depths of my mind, but also seemed to be transmitted to my ears from a very far place. Everyone looked at each other. It seemed that Yen Qingyi couldn't explain it clearly. "Okay, then you can come with us." The Empyrean fairy thought for a while and agreed. Tang Zheng naturally didn't have any objections. Yen Luyun saw Yi Dingdang lying unconscious on the sofa. He wanted to ask what had happened and what the purpose of this trip was, but Tang Zheng had already said, "Time is of the essence. Let's talk while we walk." When everyone arrived at the port, Yen Luyun and Yen Qingyi already knew the ins and outs of the matter. When they heard that they were going to the Gate of Heaven, and that the Gate of Heaven was very mysterious, Yen Luyun looked very excited, and his face turned red. Yen Luyun was the young master of a big family. Although he was usually very free, there were very few opportunities for adventure. This time, he could actually go out to sea to explore the unknown and mysterious Gate of Heaven. How could he not be excited? The Empyrean fairy chose a direction, and the big ship set off towards the destination. In the cabin, Tang Zheng was guarding Yi Dingdang closely. Their eyes met, and invisible information was exchanged through their eyes. They were very tacit. The two of them didn't need to say a word. Just a simple look and subtle expression was enough to express too much. When Yi Tianlei and Feng Xinyang saw the scene, they tactfully left the room. They were relieved, but also worried about their daughter's life. They stood on the deck and looked into the distance. The vast sea and the scenery were vast, but it couldn't dispel the worry in their hearts. The Empyrean fairy also stood at the bow of the ship with her hands behind her back. She was indifferent. Everywhere she looked, familiar and strange scenes entered her eyes. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.